Welcome to Chilling Labubu. If you enjoy tonight's atmosphere, consider liking and subscribing. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin.
Okay, so this happened a long time ago, but I can still picture it like it was last week. I was around 11 at the time, and we were living in this small, kind of plain apartment. Nothing fancy, just warm and familiar. It was summer, the kind where the days feel slow and endless, and the nights are quiet enough that you can hear the building settling. Everything felt normal, safe even. My mom and my little sister were out of town visiting relatives for a few days, so it was just me and my dad at home. One night, I took a shower pretty late, nothing unusual. I remember stepping out into the bathroom with my hair still damp and the whole room warm from the steam. The mirror was completely fogged over, like a blank gray sheet. I grabbed my toothbrush and started brushing, half asleep, staring at that cloudy mirror without really seeing anything. And then, my dad walked in. He came up beside me at the sink with his own toothbrush, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. We stood there together, brushing our teeth in silence, and for some reason, both of us started watching the mirror as the steam slowly began to clear, like the glass was waking up. That's when it happened. As the fog thinned, we could suddenly see more of the reflection, and behind us, right there, like she'd been in the room the whole time, there was a woman, or something that looked like a woman. She was standing a few feet back, calm as anything, brushing her hair like she belonged there. Slow, steady strokes. No rush, no panic. Just grooming, like it was her bathroom. I swear, my whole body locked up. I couldn't even breathe right. And I didn't look away because my brain was trying to make it make sense. I could see her clearly in the mirror, her shape, her arms moving, the motion of the hairbrush. And then, just like that, she was gone. Not like she turned and walked out. Not like she faded gradually. 1 second she was there, and the next second the space behind us was empty, like someone had cut her out of the scene. It couldn't have been more than 5 seconds total, but it felt like forever. My toothbrush slipped right out of my hand into the sink. I remember staring at my dad, waiting for him to say something, anything, to explain it. Because if he saw it too, then I wasn't crazy. And if he didn't, then I didn't even know what that meant. He looked at me, completely blank-faced, and goes, really calmly, "I didn't see anything." And I knew, right then, I knew he was lying. I kept asking him about it for days. I wasn't even being dramatic, I was just desperate. Like, "Dad, tell me what that was. Tell me you saw it. Tell me it was a trick of the light, or a neighbor, or literally anything." But he wouldn't budge. He just shrugged it off every time, like I was talking about a weird dream. I eventually stopped asking, but it didn't leave me. It sat in the back of my mind like a splinter. A few years later, maybe 3 or 4, we ended up watching one of those paranormal movies together late at night. I don't even remember who suggested it, but the vibe of it brought everything rushing back. And I finally said it again, real quiet, like I was testing the air. "Do you remember that night in the bathroom? The mirror?" And he didn't laugh. He didn't brush it off. He just went still for a second, stared at the TV, and then he admitted it. He said, "Yeah, I saw her. Clear as day." He told me he'd been just as shocked as I was, but he panicked, like real protective parent panic, and decided that if he pretended it didn't happen, maybe I'd forget. Maybe I'd feel safer. Maybe it wouldn't become a thing that followed me. And that's the part that gets me, honestly. The fact that we both saw it, at the same time, in the same mirror, and neither of us can explain it. We weren't messing around. We weren't telling ghost stories. We weren't even thinking about anything creepy. It was just a normal night in a normal apartment. Until it wasn't. To this day, I have no idea who or what that was behind us in that reflection. But I still think about her sometimes. Not even in a horror movie way. More like a question that never got answered. And if you've ever had something like that happen, something you can't file away neatly, I think you know exactly what I mean. Hey, so let me set the scene for you. I live out in what used to be nothing but quiet countryside, and now it's turning into a town right in front of my eyes. You know the kind of change I mean. Bulldozers, fresh roads that smell like tar, big signs for future grocery stores, rows of new houses popping up where deer used to cross. It's all still half finished though. My little neighborhood sits right on the edge of it, woods on one side, and on the other, just long stretches of open land where you can see for what feels like forever. And from the very first night I spent here, I had this feeling, like I was being watched whenever I stepped outside. Not always in a dramatic way either. Sometimes it felt distant, like whatever it was noticed me the way you notice a passing car, not really interested. But other times it felt focused. Like I was the only thing in the whole yard that mattered. Especially after dark, when the sky was clear and the moonlight made the grass look almost silver. I'll be honest, I did the stupid thing we all swear we wouldn't do. I challenged it. Not because I wanted trouble, more like I needed to know I could walk into my own backyard without feeling like a guest who might be asked to leave. So I started doing this weird little routine. I'd step farther out into the yard, closer to where the trees get thicker, where the shadows swallow the light. I'd stay a little longer each time, and the whole time I'd talk, out loud. I'd say things like, "I'm just grabbing something real quick," or "I'm only walking out here because this is my yard, okay?" And always, I'd add something like, "No disrespect, I mean that." It probably sounds ridiculous, but it felt important. Like setting a boundary, but gently. Like, I see you, and I'm not here to fight you. Eventually, I started saying something else too. Something softer. "I respect that you were here first," I'd tell the dark. "I really do. And I don't mind sharing this space. But I don't appreciate being scared at my own home." And I meant it. I wasn't trying to claim the land like I owned the whole history of it. I didn't choose this place because I wanted to move into someone else's territory. Life just put me here. This went on for a long time, and at first the presence felt protective, almost threatening, like a warning. But over time, it shifted. The fear eased. The vibe changed from stay back to something more curious. Like it was watching me because it was trying to figure me out. And then the feathers started. I know, feathers aren't exactly rare. There are birds everywhere out here. But here's the thing. For months, I didn't find a single one. Not one. Then suddenly, after those daytime moments started, where I'd feel that same awareness even in full sun, I began spotting feathers on the ground like little gifts. At first it was one feather here and there. I would get genuinely excited, like a kid finding seashells. I started keeping them. I found this old glass jar in the kitchen and tossed them in, and it became this oddly comforting collection. Then it ramped up. 1 or 2 turned into 5. 5 turned into a dozen. Some days I'd walk the yard and find so many I'd start laughing like, "Okay, I get it. Hello?" Most of them were bright blue at first. Blue jay feathers. Those sharp little flashes of color that don't even look real against the dirt. Then other kinds started showing up. Softer ones. Speckled ones. A dark one that looked almost black until the sun hit it. And one morning, this is my favorite. Something happened that I still can't explain without my skin prickling. That one beat everything for me. Even the glossy dark feather I found later, and the smaller, sturdier one that looked like it belonged to a young hawk. The day after the owl feather, I found a handful of little soft tufts nearby, like someone had shaken out a pocket of moonlight. That whole feather thing carried on for months, until the weather cooled and the birds thinned out. The jar is pretty full now, and honestly, the feathers started feeling like proof that whatever this was, it wasn't just my imagination running away with me. Like there was a conversation happening, in a language I didn't fully understand. Then, a couple of weeks ago, something happened that knocked all the calm right out of me. It was late afternoon, not even fully dark yet. I was outside with my dogs, Rue and Miso, just letting them sniff around while I babbled to them the way people do when they love their animals and don't care who thinks it's weird. The air had that cold edge to it, and the sky looked washed out, like winter was practicing. And I felt the presence again. Only this time, it was close. I actually smiled without thinking. That's how familiar it had gotten, like noticing a neighbor you don't talk to, but you've seen enough times that it doesn't feel threatening anymore. And then, out of the corner of my eye, something moved. Not a squirrel, not a bird, not wind. A shape stepped out from behind a tree on the far side of the yard. I swear to you, my whole body reacted before my mind even caught up. Goosebumps climbed my arms like someone dragged ice across my skin. Every hair on my neck lifted. The back of my head went tight, like my instincts were trying to pull me backward. And for a second, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. It looked like a person, but not exactly. This figure was draped in fur and rough hide, the kind of clothing that doesn't belong in any modern day. There were bits of bone and sticks tied on, like ornaments, like tools, like warnings. And on its head was a skull. Not just any skull. It had antlers, huge branching antlers, bigger than anything I've ever seen in real life. The skull sat like a mask, and behind the empty sockets, I could feel eyes, like something was looking through it. It met my gaze, locked on, and then it did the strangest thing. It nodded. Not aggressive, not rushed, just a slow, deliberate nod, like, I see you, I acknowledge you. It took one step, and it was gone. Not ran, not ducked, just disappeared in a way that made my brain scramble for an explanation it couldn't find. Rue and Miso started barking like crazy at something across the street, like they heard or saw a separate disturbance. But my third dog, Juno, the one who usually acts like affection is a personal insult, stood perfectly still, staring at the exact spot where the figure had been. And then Juno stepped closer to me, right up beside my leg. That's the part that keeps looping in my head, because I can explain away a lot of things. Shadows, nerves, stress, the mind playing tricks. But my dog acknowledged it. Not with a bark, not with fear, more like caution and recognition. So now I'm left holding this memory like a stone in my pocket. I don't know what it was. I'm not going to pretend I do. I don't know if it was something ancient or something passing through, or something that's been here longer than the town plans and construction crews and coming soon signs. All I know is, I used to feel watched like prey, and now it feels more like I'm being observed by something that's deciding what I am. And I can't tell if that makes me feel safer, or if it's the scariest part of all. So, I'm going to tell you about something that still makes my stomach do that slow, awful drop when I think about it. For context, I'm 26 now, but this happened when I was maybe 12 or 13, somewhere around 2011 or 2012. And I'll be honest with you, there are pieces that are fuzzy because of a head injury I had later on. Dates, small details, the exact order of a couple moments. It's not all perfectly stitched together in my head, but the feeling of it, that part is crystal clear. My family and I were road tripping like we'd done a bunch of times, one of those long hauls between states. I want to say we were headed from Washington down toward Oklahoma, but even that part flips around in my memory sometimes. Either way, it was one of those trips where the day has been nothing but highway, snacks, and everybody slowly getting quieter as the sun goes down. We had 2 vehicles because of all the luggage. I was in the SUV with my mom and my little sister. She was around 9. My older brother Ethan was in a smaller sedan with his girlfriend at the time, Mariah, who's his wife now, which is kind of funny considering this story still comes up at family gatherings. It was late, like properly night. We'd been driving through this stretch of road where pine trees packed in tight on both sides, like walls. The GPS, one of those old suction cup ones stuck to the windshield, kept saying we wouldn't hit another town for miles. And then we saw lights ahead. Not just 1 or 2, a little cluster, like a town. And I remember my mom saying something like, maybe the GPS is out of date. Because back then, those things missed small places all the time. Ethan called my mom while we were still coming up on it. He sounded tired, like he was fighting sleep. He told her Mariah had already knocked out, and he didn't think he could safely keep going. My mom, who almost never admits she's tired, paused and said she was feeling it too. So we agreed we'd pull in, find a motel, sleep a few hours, and continue in the morning. Ethan slowed down and tucked in behind us so he could follow our lead into town. And that's when the weird part started. We passed a sign with the town's name on it, and my gut just twisted. Like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up with yet. I stared at the sign as we passed, trying to lock the name into my memory. I can't tell you what it said. And here's the part that still freaks me out. None of us can. Not my mom, not Ethan, not my sister. We all remember seeing it. We all remember saying it out loud. We even wrote it down later, more than once, because my mom was dead set on never accidentally driving through there again. But the name never stuck. It's like it slid right out of our heads. As we drove deeper into town, everything looked too still. You know how even quiet towns have something? A car going by, a porch light, a dog bark, trash in the gutter, anything that says, people live here. This place didn't have that. The streetlights were on, but they glowed this dull yellow-orange that made everything look sick. The buildings we passed were dark. No parked cars, no movement. And the air felt heavy, like the whole place was holding its breath. I didn't have the words for it back then, but now I know it was anxiety. That prickly feeling on the back of your neck where you suddenly feel watched. We ended up pulling off near a church sitting slightly up on a little rise. The church had one bright white light above the entrance. Clean, normal light. Like it didn't belong with the rest of the town. The parking lot was gravel, and it crunched loud under our tires. I remember thinking, okay, so it's not just me. I was walking near the edge of the light, trying to loosen my legs, when I heard gravel shift. Fast. Like something small sprinted. Across the lot there was this big dumpster sitting mostly outside the light's reach. I could only see the outline of it, but something moved behind it. Quick, low, and deliberate. My mom snapped her head toward the sound immediately, like she'd been waiting for anything to confirm her instincts. and she didn't hesitate. "Get in the car, now." I remember backing up toward the SUV without turning around. I don't know why. I just couldn't make myself put my back to that dumpster. Ethan and Mariah stayed in their car, and Ethan helped my mom punch in a nearby motel on the GPS. Once it was set, we left the church lot and drove through the rest of town. It was the same the whole way, eerily clean. No trash, no stray signs of life, just those orange lights and empty streets. The GPS led us out to a gravel road that dipped down into this wide open clearing surrounded by thick woods. And sitting there, like it had been dropped out of nowhere, was the motel. Not a modern hotel, more like an old-school 2-story L-shaped place with doors facing the parking lot. The check-in office was a separate little building off to the side, lit by one pale, hollow-looking light. The kind of light that makes skin look gray. My mom told us to stay in the cars while she went inside. The office had big windows so we could see her clearly. And this is where it still messes with me, because all of us saw something different. I swear, I saw an older man behind the counter. Thin, hunched, a face like he'd forgotten how to smile. He didn't look surprised to see my mom, just irritated she existed. But my sister later insisted she saw a younger guy, dark hair, tense, like he was annoyed and nervous at the same time. And Ethan said he saw someone else entirely, a middle-aged man with a beard who looked bored, like he couldn't care less about anything. Same moment, same window, 3 totally different people. My mom came out like she'd made a decision before she even stepped outside. She waved Ethan forward, and we parked in front of 2 rooms next to each other. She told us, "Only grab what you absolutely need. We're leaving early." We all agreed way too quickly. Inside, the room felt wrong. That's the simplest way to put it. The air smelled stale, like damp carpet and old cleaning chemicals that didn't quite do the job. My mom and I looked at the beds, and I guess my face gave me away because she said, almost quietly, "You don't want to touch them either, do you?" And I remember this weird little moment where I felt relieved, like, okay, it's not just me imagining this. My sister asked to shower, and my mom went to help her, but the water wouldn't turn on. So my mom called Ethan and asked if my sister could use their shower instead. A few minutes later, Ethan came back to our room fast, like he'd run. He pushed the door open too hard and startled both of us. He didn't even explain at first. He just said, "Pack up, right now. Mom, come here." My sister came in behind him looking pale and shaky, like she was trying not to cry. I asked her what happened, and it took her a second to force the words out. "There was blood," she said, "in the shower. Not like a tiny smear, enough that it registered. Enough that she backed out and called Ethan, and Ethan called my mom. My mom didn't argue. She didn't go complain. She didn't ask for a refund. She just said, very calm and very firm, "Put everything back in the car. Get in." We loaded up and left immediately. We drove back through town toward the highway, and the second I saw those orange lights again, I felt that same awful certainty. We're not supposed to be here. But Ethan needed gas. Right at the edge of town, like the town was already shrinking behind us, there was a gas station. Bright lights, open sign, the whole thing. Still no cars, no employee vehicle, nothing. Ethan pulled up to the pump, and my mom pulled in right beside him. We all went inside together once he started pumping, grabbed drinks and snacks, paid, everything normal for about 30 seconds. And then we walked back out. I was walking next to Ethan, and I remember we were trying to laugh, talking about something dumb just to break the tension. Ethan finished pumping. He was putting the nozzle back when something moved across the far side of the lot. Both of our heads snapped up at the exact same time. There was a shed in the back corner of the station lot, half shadowed, and behind it were trees, tall, dense, and black like a wall. Two figures darted behind the shed. Fast. Too fast to be casual. Ethan's whole posture changed instantly. He didn't turn to look at me, just said, low and sharp, "Get in the car." And then, like the night itself leaned forward, 3 pairs of glowing eyes appeared above and beside the shed. Yellow amber, bright, fixed on us. And they weren't low to the ground, they were high, higher than the shed line. Like whatever they belonged to was tall enough that the eyes sat above the roof edge. Ethan shouted, not a normal shout, a panic shout. "Get in the car! Now!" I ran. I jumped into the SUV so hard I think I slammed the door. Ethan dove into his car, and my mom peeled out right behind him the second she saw us moving. My mom kept asking what happened because she hadn't seen the eyes from her angle, but my sister had. She was pressed to the window, shaking, telling her through tears what we'd seen. Ethan confirmed it over the phone while he drove. Eyes, 3 sets, by the shed, too high. No one spoke for a few minutes after that. Just road noise, breathing, the sound of fear settling in your chest. We drove to the next town we recognized, an actual town with normal lights and cars, and checked into a Holiday Inn. Bright lobby, families, vending machines, all of it. Like reality had snapped back into place. And we stayed up for a while in one of the rooms, going over it again and again, trying to make it make sense. The next morning, we tried to look up the town. We couldn't find it. We tried older maps. We asked locals about a town a little ways back on that route. People looked at us like we were confused. They told us there wasn't anything out that way for miles. And that's the part that still sits with me years later. Not just the motel, not just the blood, not even the eyes. It's the way that town felt like it wasn't supposed to exist, and the way its name slipped out of all our minds like it had never been there in the first place. We don't talk about it constantly, but every so often someone will bring it up. Usually Ethan, usually with this quiet look on his face, and we'll all get that same little chill. Because whatever that place was, it left a mark on all of us. So I've always been a weird sleeper in this one specific way. Unless I'm completely out cold, I'm usually aware that I'm asleep. Like, I can still sense the room. I can still feel when something shifts. It's hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but it's been true for me forever. This happened a couple years back, and I still don't have a clean explanation for it. It was late, properly dark, and I was in my room asleep when I got this sudden, heavy feeling. Like that instinctual drop in your stomach when you know someone is looking at you. I'm the kind of person who trusts that feeling because it's almost always right for me. I remember my eyes opening really slowly, like my body was bracing itself. And at the end of my bed, there was my mom. Except, okay, her name's Elaine in this story, because even now it feels unreal, like it happened to someone else. Elaine was standing right there at the foot of my bed, in the exact same soft t-shirt and pajama bottoms she'd been wearing earlier. My eyes adjusted fast enough that I could see her clearly, and what got me immediately was that she wasn't moving. Not shifting her weight, not breathing in a way I could notice, not doing that normal little human movement people do without thinking. And the vibe coming off her was wrong. Her posture looked normal at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more it felt like she was being pulled down, like her body was too heavy for itself. And her face, she had my mom's face, sure, but it didn't feel like it was her behind it. Her eyes were the worst part. They were the right color, the right shape, the right everything. but the feeling they gave me was like someone had copied her features perfectly and forgot to put the person inside. Like something was wearing Elaine the way you'd wear a coat, and it was doing a pretty good job, but not good enough to fool you up close. I genuinely thought, for half a second, maybe she was sleepwalking, or maybe she was standing there and zoned out. So I whispered, "Mom?" And then a little louder, "Mom! Mom!" Nothing. No blink, no reaction, no softness, just that empty, locked stare like she was waiting for something. My bedside lamp was on the little table to my right, and the door is basically right there too. Like, if someone wanted to leave quickly, I would have heard it. But my brain was scrambling for logic, so I reached over and flipped the lamp on. I swear I looked away for the shortest moment, like 1 second, maybe less. And when I looked back, she was gone. Just gone. Like she'd never been there at all. And that's when the fear really hit. Not the nervous, jumpy kind. The kind that makes your whole body go cold, because your mind stops offering explanations and just goes, "No, that wasn't normal." I shot out of bed and bolted down the hall to her room. I didn't even stop to think about how ridiculous I probably looked. I just needed to know. Elaine was in bed, dead asleep. Not just lay down asleep, like fully asleep. The kind where her breathing was deep and steady, and she was doing that little snore she gets when she's really out. And I know my mom. She takes forever to fall into that kind of sleep. She doesn't drop off instantly. I stood there for a second, staring at her, trying to get my heart to slow down. And then I finally woke her up because I couldn't hold it in. And she blinked at me, all confused and groggy, and went, "What? No. What are you talking about?" And that should have made me feel better, but honestly, it made it worse, because it confirmed what I already knew. Whatever I saw wasn't her. The whole thing couldn't have been longer than maybe 10 seconds, 15 at most. But it felt deliberate, like it wanted me to wake up, like it wanted to be seen. And I still don't know what it was. I don't know if it was there to scare me, or test me, or just watch. I don't know if it was trying to hurt me, or if it had already done what it came to do, and I just never realized. All I know is that I've never forgotten the feeling of those eyes. Her eyes. But not her eyes. So, for a long time, I kept hearing this noise. Just this low, shapeless sound in the background. Like the kind of thing you ignore because you assume it's nothing. The fridge, the pipes, the neighbors, whatever. But one afternoon, a few weeks back, I was home from work, stretched out on the couch, waiting for the time I needed to go pick up my kid from school, and I noticed something. It wasn't just noise. It sounded like a radio, like actual radio static. That thin, dusty shh sound, and then the weird little shifts like someone slowly turning a dial. At first I thought my brain was just playing tricks on me because I was tired. But then, the more I let myself relax, the clearer it got. Like the calmer I became, the more it tuned in. And then, I started hearing songs. Real songs. Different genres, different voices. Sometimes something that sounded old. Sometimes something that sounded brand new. The static never went away though. Always that analog hiss underneath. Like the signal was coming from somewhere slightly off. Here's the part that messed with me. Some of the songs were completely unfamiliar, but I could catch lyrics, just little lines, and I'd write them down and search them later. And a bunch of the time, the songs were legit. They existed. Not stuff I knew. Not stuff I'd ever played. Just songs I somehow heard through this invisible radio-sounding thing in my room. But there was one song, one specific one, that I couldn't find anywhere. I tried everything. Different lyric searches, different combinations, humming it into apps, even searching the vibe and genre like a maniac. Nothing. It was like it belonged to nothing, and it got stuck in my head for days in a way that felt invasive, like it had roots. Then, a few nights later, I woke up because the music was loud. Not, oh, the TV is on. Not, someone left a speaker running. I mean, it was like my entire room was filled with it. Like the sound had no direction. It was everywhere at once, pressing against the walls, under the bed, in the air. And it was this old track I hadn't thought about since I was a teenager. Like one of those songs you forget exists until you hear 2 seconds and your whole past snaps awake. In my version, it wasn't Knocking Boots. It was Backseat Rhythm by some late 90s artist I swear I haven't heard since I was 14. And the creepy thing is, I never knew more than the hook back then. But that night, I knew whole lines. Like I'd been singing it forever. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even panic right away. I kind of enjoyed it. Because the feeling in my body wasn't fear. It was this heavy, blissy calm. The kind of calm where you could sit up if you wanted to, but you don't, because you feel so relaxed it's like your bones are melting into the mattress. Which is weird, because I've dealt with sleep paralysis since I was little. Normally, when that hits, I get the classic stuff. Pressure, trapped feeling, this sense that something is in the room with me. Terror, basically. But this is different. It resembles sleep paralysis in the my body isn't doing what I want way, but without the crushing dread. It's like I'm sedated, softly pinned, and I realized something that scared me later. I can only hear it when I'm relaxed. The more relaxed I am, the louder it gets, the clearer it gets. If my mind starts racing, it fades back into static. If I surrender into calm, it sharpens into music, like I'm the tuner, like my nervous system is the dial. So of course I did the rational checklist, and I know how this sounds, but it feels slightly paranormal, like sleep paralysis always has, for me. Except this time it's not just dread. There's a signal. There's content. There are songs with structure and lyrics and emotion. And it makes me feel like, I don't know, like maybe there's a seam in reality, like I'm hearing through a crack. And I keep thinking, why is it always when I'm alone? That's another thing. My sleep paralysis episodes, my worst ones, almost always happen when I'm alone. Not at work, not in public, not when I'm out doing normal life. But if I'm alone at home, or alone in a quiet room, it's like my body decides, yep, time to freeze. And then the fear comes, and it feels like a presence, like something noticing me. I've done the sleep study thing. I've done the mental health evaluation thing. I've had professionals nod at me and give me the most reasonable explanations. And I've tried so hard to swallow them, because I want to be a person who believes in boring answers. But this music thing, it's been pleasant mostly. And that's almost worse, because now I'm questioning myself. Like, am I being lured? Is it harmless? Is it trying to make me comfortable on purpose? And I keep circling the same questions in my mind. Do I engage with it? Do I ignore it? Do I try to make it stop? Could it be malevolent? And I probably should have started with the backstory, because this didn't come out of nowhere. Astral projection is something I've tried to avoid for years. Even saying that makes me feel ridiculous, but I'm being honest. Because with sleep paralysis, sometimes it doesn't just feel like I'm stuck, it feels like something is tugging at me, like a force trying to pull me out of myself. And right before the music started, I had this experience that I keep replaying. I was in bed. The paralysis hit. That familiar click where your body goes offline. And then I slipped out. Not metaphorically. I mean, I felt myself fall out of my body like my consciousness rolled off the bed. I turned and saw myself lying there. My own body, my own face. Still, sleeping. And then I heard voices in the hallway outside my room. A man's voice, low and urgent, like he was talking to someone else who wasn't quite human, or maybe just wasn't quite here. And I heard him say something like, "Keep her contained. She's not from the inner side. She could be a problem." And I swear to you, my blood went cold. Except I didn't have blood, not in that moment. I was just awareness, panicking. Then it felt like someone came into the room. A woman presence. I couldn't see her, but I could feel her like a shift in pressure, like the air got heavier. And I was freaking out because I couldn't make my body move and I couldn't see what was in my room. And then, this is the part I can't stop thinking about. She turned on 2 radios. 2. Except I couldn't see them either. But I heard them click on, and suddenly there were 2 songs playing at once, layered over that static. And instead of making it worse, it calmed me down. It was like she did it on purpose. Like she knew I was panicking and she was trying to soothe me, the way you'd put on music for a kid having a nightmare. And I remember thinking, why would something evil try to calm me down? And then immediately thinking, unless that's exactly how you get someone to stop resisting. I remember trying to get out. I remember floating to the door, grabbing for the knob, trying to yank it open, and my hand kept sliding through it, like it wasn't solid, like I was trying to hold smoke. Eventually, I went back to my bed and kind of laid myself down on top of my body, like matching my shape to it. And as soon as I relaxed enough, I snapped back in. I sat straight up, gasping, heart pounding. The next day, I wrote it down. I told my therapist. Then life moved on, and I shoved it into the strange brain stuff folder and tried to forget about it. And now this music is happening. Now it's like, whenever I get relaxed enough, especially at night, it's back. The static, the tuning, the songs. Like that night left a door cracked open, and now the sound leaks through. So I'm asking you like I'm sitting across from you, elbows on the table, eyes a little too wide. Am I the only one who has experienced something like this? And what do you think it is? Is it just sleep paralysis evolving? Is my brain building sound out of nothing? Or is there actually something, somewhere, broadcasting through whatever layer I'm slipping into when my body goes still? And if it is something, what do I do? Because the more I think about it, the scarier it gets. Not because it feels bad, but because it feels real. Real enough that it makes me wonder if the world is thinner than we pretend it is. Like there's another world pressed right up against ours, separated by a veil you can accidentally breathe through when you're too calm, too alone, too quiet. Do I listen closer? Or do I stop relaxing and keep my hands on the wheel? Because whatever this is, might notice that I'm noticing it. Okay, so let me tell you about this place, because even now, thinking back on it makes my skin go a little tight, like the air itself is remembering. There's this small town called Marrowbrook, the kind of town where everyone waves, everyone knows your business, and every harmless old story gets repeated so many times it starts sounding like fact. And on the edge of it, just beyond the last few streetlights, there's an old estate people don't talk about unless they're trying to scare you on purpose. They called it the Renmore House. It was this towering Victorian mansion with sharp gables and a wraparound porch that sagged like tired shoulders. Ivy had crawled all over the brick for years, thick as a blanket, and the trees around it leaned in close like they were keeping a secret. The house had been empty forever, decades at least. The windows were dark, the gate half swallowed by weeds, and still, folks acted like it was listening. Then a couple moved in. Not James and Clara, different pair, Elliot and Mara. Young, hopeful, the kind of people who see rot and dust and think, we can bring it back. They bought the place cheap, and you could tell they were proud, like they'd rescued something. The first night they slept there, Mara told me the lights started acting strange. Not just flickering like bad wiring, No, it was patterned, like somebody was tapping out a slow little code. Bright, dim, bright, bright, dim, pause, and then again. Elliot, of course, did the practical thing. Old house, he said. Old electrical. He even laughed, like he was trying to shame the fear out of the room. But Mara couldn't shake the feeling that the house was doing it on purpose, like it wanted them to notice. And then came the smells. That's the part that gets me the most, honestly. Because you can explain a draft. You can explain creaky floors. But a scent, strong enough to fill a room, appearing out of nowhere? That's different. One minute, she'd be unpacking dishes, and suddenly the kitchen would reek of honeyed roses, sweet and thick like a funeral arrangement left too long in heat. Then it would vanish, and a few hours later she'd catch the sharp, bitter sting of burnt bread, like someone had forgotten toast in a dark corner. Sometimes it was wet soil, that cold garden smell, like freshly turned earth after rain. And once, she swore it was smoke and myrrh, like incense drifting through a church that wasn't there. It wasn't constant. That was the thing. It came like a visitor. And it always seemed to happen when Mara was alone. One evening, Elliot drove into town to pick up supplies. Paint rollers, wood filler, all that restoration stuff. Mara stayed behind in the parlor with a book, trying to ignore how enormous the house felt at night. She said she was reading the same paragraph over and over because the silence was too loud. Then the temperature dropped. Not slowly, instantly. Like someone had opened a freezer door inside the walls. She looked up, expecting maybe a window had slipped open, but the curtains weren't moving. Still, a gust ran through the room, curling around her ankles and up her spine, and she felt this soft touch, like lips. Not a peck, not something playful, just a delicate brush against her cheek, so gentle it was almost tender. After that, it escalated. The smells became more frequent, stronger. The lights began to pulse even when no one was near a switch. And Mara started waking up at night with the strangest sense of being watched. No, not watched. Waited for. Then came the night she woke to the feeling of a kiss. Right on the mouth. Warm, unhurried, almost affectionate. She sat bolt upright so fast she nearly knocked the breath out of herself. Elliot was asleep beside her, mouth slightly open, dead to the world. The room was still. No footsteps, no movement. Just the lingering sensation, like somebody had been there and only just left. The next morning she tried to laugh it off. Stress dream, she said. Old house nerves. But her eyes didn't match her voice. So they did what people always do when something doesn't make sense. They looked backward. They dug into history. They found old records at the library, deeds, yellowed newspaper clippings. A family that had once lived there, the Holloways, reclusive and wealthy, and by all accounts, deeply unhappy. One by one, things happened to them. A fall down the grand staircase, a drowning in the estate's pond despite being an excellent swimmer, an illness that arrived too quickly and left too cleanly. Every death filed neatly under tragedy, yet the whispers in town always used a different word. Curse. And then, in the oldest local paper they could find, there was this half-forgotten story, more folklore than fact. A legend about something hungry that lingered in Renmore House. Not a single ghost, not one angry spirit, but a cluster of presences, like shadows wearing different faces. People didn't call them demons exactly, not at first. They called them the lingering ones, the unseen guests. But the descriptions were always the same. The flickering lights, the sudden scents, the intimate touches. As if the house wanted to confuse you with comfort. As if it wanted you to mistake invasion for affection. Mara told me she hated that part most, the tenderness of it, because it made her second guess her own fear. Then came the storm. You know those nights where the sky doesn't just rain, it punishes? Wind clawing at the roof, thunder shaking the windows, the whole world sounding angry. That was the night everything broke open. The lights went mad, not flickering, strobing. Hallway bulbs flashing like a warning. Lamps in the parlor brightening until the shades glowed, then plunging into darkness. The smells poured in all at once. Roses and smoke and damp earth and burnt bread, layered so thick Mara said she tasted them on her tongue. She tried to call Elliot's name, but the house swallowed her voice. And then she did something she swore she'd never do. She spoke to it. Not to the house exactly, to whatever was inside it. She stood in the middle of the parlor, shaking, with rain battering the windows, and she said, out loud, "Please, please stop. We didn't come here to disturb you. We just want to live. We just want peace." There was a long, awful pause, and then everything went still. The lights steadied, the air settled. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath for half a second. Mara said she started crying, not loudly, just tears slipping down her face, because for the first time, it felt like she'd been heard. And that's when she felt it. A kiss, soft, lingering, placed right on her forehead. Not mocking, not hungry. The next morning, the house was quiet. Not the uneasy kind of quiet where you're waiting for the next sound, just normal, peaceful even. The lights behaved, the air smelled like old wood and dust and lemon cleaner. No roses, no smoke, no damp earth drifting through closed rooms. They stayed after that. They kept restoring the place, sanding floors, repainting trim, opening curtains that hadn't seen daylight in years. But Mara told me something changed in them. Because once you've lived in a house that touches you back, once you've felt something unseen lean close enough to kiss you, you don't ever fully forget it. Renmore House became their home. But it was never just their home. And sometimes when Mara talks about it, her voice gets softer at the edges, like she's careful not to offend something listening from the dark corners of memory. Like whatever lived there didn't leave completely. It just stepped back, out of sight, not far. Okay, so I've got to tell you about something that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. This happened one night when I was driving home with my daughter, Maya, and her boyfriend, Eli. Maya was 16 at the time, and I'd been teaching her how to drive, so she was behind the wheel. I was in the passenger seat doing that classic parent thing, trying to look calm while silently watching everything, and Eli was in the back seat, half on his phone, half watching the road. It was late, maybe around midnight, give or take. Not dead quiet late, but late enough that the city had thinned out. A few cars here and there, streetlights humming, that kind of mood. We were heading along this stretch where the road starts to rise and turns into an overpass, with freeway on-ramps and off-ramps branching nearby. If you know the area, you know it has this weird, open feeling, like there's nowhere to hide, but also lots of shadow. We're coming up on the base of the incline, maybe 100 feet away, when we see something move across the road. At first I think, oh, some big dog. But the second my eyes really catch it, I get this instant, wrong feeling. It was large, like wolf-sized, but too skinny. And the way it ran, this is hard to explain unless you've really watched animals move. But I could see the front legs lifting, tucking under, touching down, and then the back legs following. Like a dog's gait, totally four-legged, except something about it looked unnatural. Like the proportions weren't quite right. or the motion was almost too smooth. I didn't say anything out loud because I didn't want to freak Maya out while she was driving, but I glanced over at her, and she glanced at me at the exact same time. That's the part that gets me, because we both had the same face, that confused, uneasy, "Did you just see that?" look. No words, but total silent agreement. The thing makes it across the street, heading toward our side, and we keep rolling forward. Then we hit a red light, and now we're sitting there, waiting. I remember thinking, okay, it's going to come along the sidewalk and pass in front of us, any second now. There weren't pedestrians, no one walking, no group of people, just the three of us and a few distant headlights. So I'm watching that edge of darkness where it should appear, and then it does. Except, it's not a dog. It's a man. This pale-faced man comes out of that dim patch like he'd been there the whole time, except that makes no sense. He's riding a bicycle, slow and steady, like this is the most normal thing in the world. And his face, listen, his face is what made my skin go cold. His eyes looked like two dark vertical slits, not normal eyes. Not like, oh, his pupils were weird, like genuinely wrong. And then he had this wide grin, stretched too far, like someone trying to imitate a smile without understanding how a real one works. He rides right past the front of our car. And then, this is the moment I can't shake. He turns his head toward us. Slowly, deliberately, like he already knew we were watching. And the feeling that came off him, I don't even know what word fits. Heavy, ominous, like a warning, like standing too close to something you're not supposed to notice. I didn't even have to speak at first. I looked at Maya and she looked at me, and I could tell she felt it too. Her whole posture changed. Finally I go, quietly, "Maya, you saw that, right?" And she nods, eyes still forward, stiff as a board. "Yeah." I swallow and say, "And you saw what ran across the street a second ago?" And I'm like, "Okay, good. That's what I saw too." And then she hits me with the question that made my heart sink all over again. But if it was a dog, where did it go? And where did that man come from? And I just sat there, staring ahead, because I didn't have an answer. That animal was big, Great Dane big, maybe bigger, tall at the shoulders, long body like a shepherd or husky type. And I swear to you, I saw all four legs moving. It didn't dart into an alley. It didn't slip behind a parked car. There was nowhere for it to vanish to. On that side of the road, there was a concrete barrier and this sloped area leading up, plus fencing and a sound wall, just open, exposed space. No bushes, no doorway, no corner, nothing. And yet, somehow, what crossed as an animal did not come out the other side as an animal. What came out was that man on the bike, with that face, with that grin, with that awful, crushing feeling in the air. The light turned green and Maya drove on, and none of us talked for a minute. Even Eli got quiet in the back, like the whole car had decided to hold its breath. We made it home. Nothing followed us. No dramatic ending. Just that one moment that doesn't fit anywhere in my brain. But I'll tell you this, even now, years later, if I drive near that overpass late at night, I catch myself scanning the road, half expecting to see something run across again. And I still don't know what we saw. I just know it started as one thing, and then it wasn't. And whatever it was, it felt like it wanted us to feel afraid. So, I work nights at a small residential home where we support adults with autism and other intellectual and developmental disabilities. It's usually pretty quiet, honestly. When I first started, I only had 2 residents on my shift. Both of them were calm, easy to be around, predictable. The kind of nights where you make coffee, do your checks, and it's peaceful. Then we took in a 3rd person. I'll call them Marin. Marin was different. Not in a hard-to-manage way at first, more like you could tell they carried a lot. Physically, Marin needed a lot of support. Power chair, limited mobility, help with basic things. Mentally, though, they were actually pretty sharp, high-functioning in a lot of ways. But there were definitely mental health pieces going on. The first few days, Marin tried to be social. They'd ask to hang out, sit in the common area, try to join conversations with the other 2 residents. But over time, that faded. They started spending more and more time in their room, and eventually it became very clear. They wanted to be alone. Like, really alone. They didn't want anyone coming in unless they specifically asked. And then there was the talking. Marin would shout at people that nobody else could see, like full-on arguments, late at night, as if someone was standing right in front of them. They said it was family members. They said they could communicate with them telepathically. Sometimes it sounded almost normal, like bickering. But other times it would get dark fast. I remember standing in the hallway during one of my rounds and hearing Marin say something like, "If I could hurt them, I would." And then a pause, like they were listening, and then, "I can't control my body. If you took over, you could do it for me." That stopped me cold, because they weren't joking. It didn't feel like they were trying to scare anyone. It felt like they genuinely believed they were in some kind of negotiation with someone. It was unsettling in a way that's hard to explain, because I've worked around all kinds of behaviors, and I'm not easily shocked. But that, it made the house feel different. Like the air got heavier. One night, Marin asked me if we had a Bible in the home. I did. It was one of those things we keep around because it's comforting for some residents. So I handed it over without thinking much about it. An hour later, I went to check on them. Pages, everywhere. They'd ripped out chunks, like handfuls of pages, just torn right out. I asked, "Hey, what happened?" Marin looked at me like it was obvious and said, "I was reading it. It made me mad." Then they asked me to take the cross necklace off them, the one they'd been wearing since they arrived. I asked why, and they shrugged and said, "I don't want it anymore." After that, Marin's vibe changed. They'd stare off into space like they were watching something just out of view. And sometimes I'd catch them staring at me. Not just looking, staring like they were trying to figure me out. And then I'd hear it, under their breath. Quiet, sharp, nasty little words. Stuff like, "You're so disgusting," or "I hate you," or just really cruel things. Every time I'd go, "What did you say?" Marin would snap back like they'd been woken up. Their eyes would refocus, and they'd say, "I didn't say anything," or "I'm just talking to myself." And I'm telling you, it didn't feel like a typical outburst. It felt like something slipping in and out, like there were moments where Marin wasn't fully there with me. Eventually, Marin decided they wanted to transfer to another home. They said they were tired of one of the roommates messing with them. So the move happened. And you'd think that would have been the end of it, but it wasn't. There's this spot in the hallway, right outside a closet, where I swear it feels like something is standing there. Not like I see a person. It's more like, you know when you walk into a room and immediately feel like you're not alone? Like your body reacts before your brain can explain anything? That's what it's like. During the day, it's fine. Bright, normal, no big deal. But at night, I won't go down that part of the hallway without turning the light on first. Even with the light on, I still rush. I don't linger back there. I don't want my back to that closet. It makes my skin prickle. And here's the part that really messes with me, because it's not just me. One of the residents, Drew, used to never care about doors. He'd wander out to the living room half asleep, leave doors open, didn't matter. Now, he closes everything. He wakes up and the first thing he does is go around shutting doors like it's part of some routine he can't skip. Bathroom door, bedroom doors, closet doors, and especially the room Marin used to stay in. Drew keeps that door closed like it's a rule carved into stone. He'll literally walk behind me and check that I shut doors all the way. If I leave one cracked, he fixes it. And he'll go into his own room and his roommate's room without hesitation, but he won't go into Marin's old room. Not to hang out, not to look around, only to push the door closed again like it needs to be sealed. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I've thought about cleansing the place, like sage, prayer, whatever people do when a house feels off. But I hesitate because Drew is sensitive, and I don't want to bring in something that could upset him, or make things worse, or even just scare him. And there's one more thing that still bothers me, even separate from all the present stuff. Marin's background made no sense. Between agencies, multiple people trying, nobody could trace where they actually came from. They had a birth certificate, but the mother listed on it, it was like she didn't exist. No records, no trail, nothing. The birth state didn't match anything anyone could verify. And Marin had clearly had surgeries in the past, scars, medical needs. Yet there were no hospital records anyone could find. No next of kin, no relatives, nothing. To the point where the company had to go through a whole process to get them issued an ID number and basic documentation, like they were a person who somehow slipped through the cracks of every system. And I know how that sounds. I do. If someone else told me this story, I'd probably raise an eyebrow. But I was there. And now I'm the one walking that hallway at 2 a.m., lights on, heart beating a little too hard, while Drew quietly moves behind me making sure every door is shut, especially the one Marin used to sleep behind. And every night, when I pass that closet, it feels like something is waiting in the corner, listening. So, this happened when I was a kid, around 2012, I think. I was maybe 10 or 11. My mom, Tanya, had been dating this guy named Rick for a couple years, and eventually she decided we were all going to move into his place. And it's weird because I don't remember a lot of houses from when I was growing up. Like, most places are just blank. But that house, I remember it way too clearly. The layout, the lighting, the feeling of it. Like it left a thumbprint on my brain. I was one of those kids who loved spooky stuff. I'd stay up watching ghost shows and anything paranormal I could find. But I wasn't the kind of kid who expected something to actually happen to me, you know? I wasn't walking around scared all the time. But about 2 weeks after we moved in, I started feeling off. Constantly. Like this low-level anxiety I couldn't explain. Not, I think I saw something fear. More like my body was reacting before my brain could make up a reason. Just this steady uneasiness, like the air in that house was heavier than it should have been. After a month or so, we got into this routine, weekend movie nights. We'd all pile into the living room, watch something late, and I'd always fall asleep on the couch. I didn't have my own room yet, so the couch was basically my spot. And every single time I woke up in the middle of the night, the TV would be off, the room would be pitch black, and I'd realize my mom and Rick had gone to bed without waking me. It sounds normal, but the second I opened my eyes, I'd get hit with this intense fear, like my stomach dropped and my skin tightened, like something in the dark was present, not visible, just there. I'd end up sneaking into my mom's room and whispering, asking if I could sleep next to her because I couldn't calm down. And she'd let me, but I could tell she didn't fully get why I was so freaked out. Then one night, this was the last time I ever slept out there. I woke up and it was darker than usual. No TV glow, no hallway light, Nothing. And Rick's cat, this gray cat named Miso, was perched on the back edge of the couch right beside me. The second I saw her, this wave of something is wrong hit me so hard it was like I'd been slapped awake. And then Miso's whole body changed. She shot upright, her fur literally lifted, like it stood on end, and she started doing this deep, low growl I had never heard from her before. Not a hiss, not playful. This was serious, like warning level. And she was staring, locked in, toward the kitchen. Toward this one area I'd been avoiding without even realizing I was avoiding it. I didn't think. I just ran, like full sprint, bare feet, heart banging, straight into my mom's room. I remember almost tripping because I was going so fast, and I begged her, actually begged her, not to make me sleep in the living room again. I was shaking so badly she could tell it wasn't me being dramatic. She believed me after that. About a week later, my cousin Jade came to visit. She was older, maybe 15 or 16. Since she was there, Rick said we could sleep in his son's old bedroom, the one that hadn't been used in years. So we're in this room that feels kind of stale, like it's been shut up for a long time. Jade sleeps on the side closest to the door, and I'm on the inside, facing the wall. And in the middle of the night, I wake up and I really have to pee. Like, bad. But I'm still messed up from that couch night, so I decide I'm not going alone. I roll over and start tapping Jade's back, whispering her name. Nothing. I tap harder, say her name again. Still nothing. She doesn't move an inch, just sleeping, facing away from me. I froze. And I remember thinking, nope, I'll hold it. I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. So I start turning back toward the wall, trying to make myself smaller, trying to just go back to sleep. And as I turn, my eyes land on the foot of the bed. There's someone sitting there. Not on the bed, like sitting the way someone sits on a chair. But there was no chair. They were upright, perfectly still, posture straight like a mannequin. At first, my brain can't process it. It's dark, and my eyes are trying to adjust, and I'm thinking maybe it's a jacket on something. Maybe it's my imagination. But then the shape becomes a person, and I realize it looks exactly like Jade. Same hair, same face, same outline, except wrong. Because the Jade beside me is still asleep, breathing evenly, not moving. And the one at the foot of the bed is turned toward me, smiling. This wide, calm smile like she's posing for a photo. Her face was clear, and her body looked almost lit from the inside, like she was softly glowing in the darkness. And at the same time, she looked thin, not like skinny, like transparent. Like if you stared long enough, you could almost see through her. I have never felt fear like that. Not I'm scared fear. Not I saw something creepy fear. This was primal. Like my body decided, you are not safe right now. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I just stared for a second that felt like a year, and then I yanked the blanket over my face and curled up as tight as I could. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, just listening, waiting, praying I'd fall asleep. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is morning light. I was desperate to tell them. I told my mom, I told Jade, and Jade, being Jade, just laughed and messed with me, like, "Oh yeah? Well, I saw you crawling on the ceiling last night," and she cracked up like it was hilarious. And after that, I stopped talking about it for a long time. Years. Because part of me was like, maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was a kid. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe my brain made it up. But deep down, I never believed that. Not really. Because I can still see it in my head. I can still feel what it felt like. And then, more recently, I brought it up to my mom again, and she didn't brush it off. She got this look on her face like she'd been waiting for me to say it. She told me that house freaked her out too, that she always felt uncomfortable there. That honestly messed with me even more, because it made it feel real, like it wasn't just in my head. And now, every time I learn something new, like people talking about astral projection, or stories about mimics, things that copy someone you know, I think back to that night. Because I still don't know what I saw. Was it Jade, like some weird out-of-body thing? Or was it something pretending to be her? All I know is, it's been more than a decade, and I still get chills when I picture that smile at the foot of the bed. Okay, so let me give you a little context first, because the way school worked where I grew up matters. I'm from Malaysia, and back when I was in secondary school, we didn't do that American thing where you switch classrooms every period. We basically lived in the same classroom all day, and the teachers rotated in and out. So your classmates were your people. Same faces, same seats, same everything, every single day. Alright, so this happened in 2018, and I was 16. And honestly, the reason I skipped school is so embarrassing. I wasn't sick or anything. I just woke up late, stared at the clock, and went, nah. Like full-on teen logic. I stayed home the entire day, in my room, scrolling on my phone and rotting in bed. Then around lunchtime, I got this call from my friend Ina. She was our class monitor, the one who took attendance. And the second I answered, I could hear it in her voice. She sounded panicked. She goes, "Are you in school today?" And I'm like, "No, I've been home. Why?" Silence. And then she just loses it. Like she genuinely freaks out. Because apparently when she was counting heads earlier that morning, she looked up and saw me sitting at my desk, like in my seat, and she marked me as present. She even told me she counted the full class, 26 out of 26, including me. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe she just counted wrong. But then she says, "No, other people saw you too." And that's when my stomach did this weird drop. She starts listing names. Nadia swore she saw me in the hallway right before the first teacher came in, like I was just standing there, waiting like normal. Farah said she saw me walking up the stairs to the second floor, like I was coming from the canteen area. And then Joanne, this one still creeps me out. Joanne said she saw me walking beside Hazik, like I was literally right next to him, heading toward our classroom. So when the first class started, the teacher asked, "Where is she?" And Ina, being totally sure I was there earlier, told the teacher I probably went to the toilet, or maybe the office, because in her mind, I was definitely in school that day. But time passes. I don't show up. The seat stays empty. And that's when she starts to get that awful feeling, like something is wrong, and she calls me. And I'm not gonna lie, when I heard all of that, I felt cold, like actually cold. Because if it were just one person, I could shrug it off. People mistake faces all the time. But multiple people, different places, someone even counted me like I was physically there. It started to feel less like a misunderstanding and more like, I don't know, like something was wearing me for the morning. And here's the thing, my school was old, like properly old, more than a century. You know the kind of place where the hallways always feel a little dim even in daylight? The kind of building that's been through wars, evacuations, who knows what. And people had stories, of course they did. There was even this one incident people used to talk about. This girl who supposedly got possessed and started writing words in Arabic, even though she didn't study it. Stuff like that. You'd hear it and laugh, but it still sits somewhere in the back of your mind. So after that day, I kept spiraling between two thoughts. Either my classmates were all just weirdly mistaken at the same time, or something was copying me. And the creepiest part is, this wasn't even the first time something like that happened in my life. But she didn't switch on any lights. And that felt odd, because my mom is not the type to walk into a dark room for no reason. So I got curious, right? I thought, what is she doing in my room? So I follow her. I walk into my bedroom, and it's pitch black. And there's nobody there. No mom, no movement, nothing. Just me standing alone in the dark, with my heart suddenly hammering like I'd run upstairs. And I remember thinking, no, I saw her. I saw her like a real person, not like a ghost in movies, nothing see-through, nothing floaty. It looked exactly like my mom, solid, normal. That realization messed with me for a long time. And then later, years later, my younger sister told me she saw me in my room once. Except here's the thing, I wasn't even in the same city. I was away for school at the time. So, yeah. Sometimes I wonder if it's just coincidence stacked on coincidence. People mixing up faces, shadows in old houses, your brain filling in blanks. But other times, I don't know. It feels like there's something that likes to imitate us. Like it watches, memorizes, and then tries on your shape when it feels like it. And honestly, even now, I still don't know which explanation is worse. So, this is one of those stories I still feel in my chest when I talk about it. Back in 2017, I was 19, and I'd never really lived away from home before. Then, suddenly I'm hauling bags up a stairwell and moving into this student flat in Sheffield with my girlfriend at the time. Her name was Maya. It was one of those places that had clearly been done up to look fresh. Gray walls, shiny fittings, that faint smell of new paint that makes you feel like you're starting a brand new chapter. And honestly, parts of that time were great. We laughed a lot. We had friends over, did the whole student life thing, walked around the city like it belonged to us. But that flat was the most terrifying place I have ever lived. I can't even tell you when it started exactly. It just crept in. Little things at first. The weird part was, we were on the top floor, and the windows barely opened, like the building was sealed shut. Yet, things moved like there was a gust tearing through. A magazine would slide right off the table like someone had flicked it. The TV remote would end up on the floor when I swore it had been sitting on the arm of the chair. Sometimes the television would switch itself on, go black, then come on again. Like it was trying to get your attention and then pretending it hadn't. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The worst part was the feeling. You know when you can sense someone behind you, like your body just knows? Imagine that, but turned up to 100. No matter where I stood in that flat, kitchen, hallway, bedroom, it felt like something was right behind me. Close, breathing close. And not just a presence, not something neutral, something mean. I'm not being dramatic. My skin would prickle. The hairs on my arms and neck would stand up and stay that way. For weeks, months. I started dreading going back after classes or work, and if I knew I'd be alone there overnight, I'd drink enough to knock myself out, because being awake in that place by myself felt like volunteering to be hunted. It felt like I was being watched by something that wanted me scared, something that enjoyed it. I'd turn, fast, to catch it. Nothing. Then that sick feeling would slide right back behind me again, like it was playing some horrible little game. You can look, but you'll never see me. And then, one completely random night, everything boiled over. It was about 1 a.m. Maya and I were in bed, fully sober, just trying to get warm under the covers because that flat was always freezing no matter what we did. We'd turned the lights out. We were settling, that slow drift towards sleep. Then, right as my eyes closed, I heard something in the next room. And I mean, it wasn't a creak. It wasn't the building settling. It sounded like someone had exploded into the living room and started throwing the place around. Like furniture was being dragged, slammed, shoved. The chair, the sofa. Heavy, violent movement. The kind of noise that makes your body go rigid before your brain even catches up. It lasted only a few seconds, and then it stopped. Dead silence. And in that silence, you do what you always do, don't you? You try to save your own sanity. You tell yourself, maybe I dreamt it. Maybe I'm half asleep. Maybe it was outside. But then Maya, in the dark, whispered, "Did you hear that too?" And the moment she said it, my stomach just dropped. Because if she heard it, it was real. I didn't even know what else to do. I started praying, quietly, like if I spoke too loud, I'd invite whatever it was closer. After that first outburst, the noises kept coming in little bursts, softer but unmistakable. The click of something hitting the floor, the faint thud of a pen dropping, slow footsteps where footsteps shouldn't be, like something was moving around out there, calm now, taking its time, because it knew we'd heard it. We stayed a few more months after that, and, weirdly, nothing ever got as intense as that night again. But the feeling never truly went away. It was like the flat had shown us what it could do, and after that, it didn't need to prove anything. Then one late evening, I was walking home from work, around 11:45 p.m., and I noticed a small group gathered near the entrance to our building. I remember thinking it was just a bunch of rowdy teenagers hanging around, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't that at all. It was a ghost tour, and I slowed down just enough to hear the guide say something like, "You're standing in one of the most haunted parts of Sheffield city center." I actually laughed, this short, stunned laugh, because it felt so ridiculous and yet so perfectly, horribly fitting. After that, I went down my own little rabbit hole. Turns out we've been living in a building off Blackwell House, right by Blackwell Square. And that square, historically, was tied to public punishments and executions. Centuries of it. The kind of history that doesn't just disappear because someone paints the walls and installs modern lighting. And I don't know what I believe, truly. I'm not someone who goes looking for ghosts, but I know what that flat felt like. I know what we heard, and I know I never, ever want to step foot inside that place again. I've got a couple other stories too. Nothing like this one, thankfully. Those are actually kind of nice. So, this was about 3 years back, when I was living in Valencia, Spain. I'd just come off this long stretch of summer nights, too many parties, too many drinks, and I'd made this promise to myself. 1 full month sober. No, just one. No exceptions. Clean reset. Now, I've always had this odd little thing happen sometimes. Not often, like not even monthly. But every once in a while I'll walk into a place and get this instant sense that, I don't know how to explain it, that there's something else there, like a shift in the air. Usually it's an uncomfortable feeling, like my body clocks it before my brain does. But here's the funny part. In all the time I'd been in Spain, I never got that feeling. Not once. I'd lived there long enough that it started to feel like a non-issue. Like maybe I'd grown out of it. Until that night. It was late, maybe around 12:30 or 1, and I was in bed reading, totally sober, just quiet and settled. And out of nowhere, I got that familiar sensation. Someone else is in the room. Except this time, it wasn't scary. It was actually kind of warm. Like the feeling you get when you realize you're not alone, but it's someone you trust. I remember pausing, looking up from the page, and sort of listening to the silence. And then I just went back to reading. Like, okay then. No big panic, no dread, just this calm awareness. Eventually my eyes started to blur, so I shut the book, clicked off the lamp, rolled onto my side, and tried to fall asleep. And then, honestly, I swear to you, a hand slapped my thigh. Not hard enough to hurt, not playful either, just a slap. A very clear, physical thwack, like someone was right there next to me. I shot upright so fast my heart felt like it punched my ribs. I flicked the light on immediately, fully expecting to see someone standing at the foot of the bed, or maybe some shadow in the corner. Nothing. The room looked completely normal. Door closed. No movement. No weird sounds. Just me, breathing like I'd sprinted. I remember sitting there for a second, rubbing my leg like I was trying to prove to myself it happened. And I was definitely creeped out, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't terrified. It was more like I didn't know what category to put it in. So I did this really stupid, very human thing where I sort of shrugged to myself like, right, sure, okay, and I went back to sleep. The next day I was just hanging around, and my phone rang. It was my older brother, Declan, calling from home in Ireland. And that alone was weird, because Declan and I weren't exactly the kind of siblings who called just to chat. We were close, sure, but more in that send a meme, see you at Christmas way. So when I saw his name pop up, I actually sat up like, is something wrong? I answered, and he was totally normal. Just chatting, asking how work was, how I was doing, what I'd been up to, like a casual check-in. We talked for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then his voice shifted a little, like he was about to tell me something he wasn't sure he even believed himself. And he goes, okay, the strangest thing happened to me last night. I swear, the blood drained out of my face. I'd almost pushed my own experience aside by then, like I'd filed it away as some half-dream, some weird muscle twitch, something my brain made up. But the second he said that, I just knew. I told him, all right, tell me. And he says, last night I was lying in bed, must have been around 2 a.m, and I felt a hand, like, squeeze my thigh. And there was this long pause, like we were both suddenly listening to the silence on the line. I remember my skin prickling, arms, neck, everything. That horrible electric goosebump feeling when something is too specific to be a coincidence. Because what are the chances? Not just that we both felt it, but that he called me at all, out of the blue, the day after, to mention something so strange, so random, so personal. After that, I told the story a few times to friends and family. People had theories. Most of them said it was our gran, who'd passed away not long before, maybe a couple of months earlier. Like a little check-in, a strange, clumsy way of saying, I'm still here, I'm okay, and you're okay too. And honestly, that's the version that sits best in my chest. I can't prove it. I don't know what it was. But if it was her, it makes it feel less like something creepy and more like something oddly affectionate. Like someone trying to get your attention the only way they can. Still, every time I think about it, I get the chills all over again. So, what do you think? Coincidence? Some weird shared timing thing? Or something else entirely? So, I'm going to keep names and places vague, just because it still feels a little too close to home. A few years ago, I started having this recurring nightmare. It wasn't complicated either. It was always the same image. A dark tower hanging over everything in my life. Not like a normal building, more like a presence. Like it hovered there, and no matter what I did, where I went, what I tried to focus on, I was doing it under that shadow. And the feeling that came with it was wrong, heavy, mean, like the tower was watching. Not long after those dreams started, I finished college, information systems technically, and I started hunting for a job. I lived just outside a town where gambling was legal, close enough that it wasn't weird to drive through it on the way to grab groceries or head home from somewhere. One afternoon, I was driving back and I noticed the first casino on the edge of town had this big banner out front, "Now hiring." It was so close to my apartment that the commute would have been laughable. I checked their site that night, and sure enough, they needed entry-level IT techs. I applied without thinking too hard, and 2 weeks later, I was badge in, radio on my belt, learning where all the network closets were. And here's where it gets unsettling. Almost immediately after I started, the nightmares shifted. They didn't go away, they got specific. I started dreaming about tragedy happening there, like the casino collapsing, or the ground opening up underneath it, like this giant sinkhole swallowing the whole building. I'd wake up with my heart racing, and the images would stick with me even after I'd brushed my teeth and tried to act normal. One day, trying to talk myself down, I asked my manager. His name was Dale, real down to earth, one of those guys who always had a story and always knew where every wire ran, what the land used to be before the casino. I was expecting something simple. Old utility lines, maybe an abandoned foundation, something explainable. He didn't even hesitate. He just kind of nodded toward the hillside outside and said, "Used to be a cemetery." I laughed, like a reflex laugh, because what else do you do? And Dale pointed up the hill again, like he was indicating a landmark, and he goes, "They moved the graves up there when they built all this." The way he said it wasn't spooky or dramatic. It was just a fact. Like he was telling me where the employee parking was, and that almost made it worse. The thing is, I loved the job. I really did. I loved the problem solving. I loved the sense of being part of something big, especially because they were building a new hotel tower attached to the casino, and there was always some new system going in. Access control, cameras, network upgrades, all this infrastructure most people never think about. I didn't touch the slot machines or gaming systems. That was a different department with their own rules and their own locked doors. But I handled all the other IT odds and ends that make a place like that run. But the building itself, it had a vibe. The worst spot was in the basement, at one far corner, like the building's blind spot. I can't explain it any better than this. When I walked down there, sometimes the back of my neck would prickle like I'd stepped into a cold draft, even if the air was still. Nothing ever jumped out at me. Nothing ever physically happened. But it felt like a place you weren't meant to linger. People swapped stories about seeing translucent figures down there, old-time workers, like miners with lamps. I never saw them, but I heard it often enough that it became part of the background noise of the place. There was one evening, late summer, still light out, when my supervisor radioed me to fix a printer in the count room area, where the cashiers and accounting stations were. I headed that way, weaving through the casino floor, and when I got to the entrance, they stopped me because it was slammed busy. So I turned around, walking back past this long line of gamblers waiting for a cashier. And halfway down the line, I felt it. That sharp little sensation like someone is staring into the side of your face. I looked over. There was an older woman, Asian, maybe in her 70s, standing there, not moving, not blinking. Just watching me like she'd been waiting for me to turn my head. And what hit me first wasn't her expression. It was her eyes. They were black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, corner to corner, no visible white, no visible iris. Nothing that looked human in the usual way. Like two smooth pools of ink in her face. And the strangest part? Nobody else reacted. People around her were chatting, checking phones, complaining about the wait. It was like I was the only one who could see that something was off. I didn't say anything. I didn't freeze. I just kept walking. Like if I acted normal, it couldn't follow me. Later, when the hotel tower was almost ready to open, one of the valet guys, Rico, caught me near the employee entrance. He was pale, jittery, like he'd been holding something in all day. He told me he'd gone up into the tower when it was supposed to be empty. No crews, no events, no guests. He had a video on his phone. In one of the banquet rooms, there was a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. And in the video, the chandelier was shaking gently, like someone had bumped it. You could hear the beads clicking, that tiny glass-on-glass sound. But nobody was near it. Nobody touched it. No airflow strong enough to do that. Just movement. Then the tower opened. A while after that, my team got told we needed to clear out a storage space in the tower. Old equipment, boxes, random IT leftovers that had been shoved into a room to deal with later. So we loaded up carts and hauled them to the elevator lobby on one of the hotel floors. I ended up standing there alone for a minute with 3 carts piled with gear, waiting for someone to radio back that they'd found us a room. The hallway was quiet in that specific way hotels are quiet, like the building is holding its breath. And then one of the carts, just one, started to roll. Slowly, smoothly, right toward me. I stared at it, and I swear my brain tried to make it normal. Maybe the floor tilted. Maybe my hands hadn't locked the wheels. Maybe... But it kept rolling. So I did the dumbest thing, because sometimes humor is the only shield you have. I half laughed and said, loud and sharp, "Okay, knock it off." And the cart stopped. Not gradually, not like friction took over. It stopped like someone put a hand on it. I quit a couple years later, but not because of any of this. Honestly, it was plain human workplace stuff. Management changes, personalities, the kind of thing that wears you down anywhere. But even after I left, the place didn't really leave me. Because the dreams came back. Not the little stress dreams. The original one. The tower. I dreamed I was standing outside, looking up at this towering hotel, and people were inside screaming and pounding on the windows like something catastrophic was happening, like the building was turning into a trap. And in the dream, I had this horrible, sinking recognition as I looked up and realized, that's it. That's the casino tower. That night, my husband, Evan, jerked awake so suddenly he woke me up, like he'd heard something. He didn't even say anything at first, just sat there, breathing hard. And I was groggy, so I rolled over and went right back to sleep. And I dreamed I heard an agonized scream, far off, carried on the air, from the direction of the casino. It's still standing. I drive past it all the time. Nothing's collapsed. The tower's still there, lit up like it's proud of itself. But I don't know how to explain this without sounding dramatic. Something about it feels wrong. Like it's still watching. Like it always was. Today is the last day of 2025. It's kind of hard to put into words, isn't it? What do you usually do on New Year's Eve? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for everything we've done together this past year, and a huge thank you to all my amazing friends for always supporting the Paranormal M channel. Wishing all of us a wonderful New Year's Eve and an even brighter 2026 ahead. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now, let's see what mysterious experiences we'll run into on this final day of the year. So, I'm an agency nurse down here in southern Louisiana, which basically means I'm the plug-the-hole person. If a facility is short-staffed for the night, I'm the one they call. I rotate through the same handful of places, so even though I'm not staff, I end up seeing the same buildings, the same halls, the same routines, over and over. But there was one place, let's call it Bayou Pines, that always felt different. Not in a busy way, in a something's off way. They took everybody. Psych issues, withdrawals, aggressive dementia, end-stage hospice, you name it. You never knew what your assignment was going to look like until the moment the charge nurse handed you the list. And at Bayou Pines, there was one resident everyone talked about in that tone. Like saying her name too loud might wake something up. People called her Ms. Delphine. Ms. Delphine was in her late 80s. Tiny, maybe 4 foot something. Frail, paper-thin arms. White hair that stayed brushed back. And she was blind. She also had dementia and a reputation for being mean in that sharp, hateful way. The kind of mean that makes your stomach tighten before you even step into the room. Nobody liked going near her door. I'm not exaggerating. Some nurses would pause, take a breath, and then go in like they were crossing a line. And here's the part that stuck with me even before my night with her. People swore she could tell the second someone stepped across her threshold. Blind or not, the moment you crossed into that room, she'd snap her head and start shouting, telling you to get out, cussing, sometimes screaming slurs. I heard more than one nurse say they kept a little vial of blessed oil in their pocket just for her med pass, like it was PPE. Her family barely came. Someone told me they visited only a couple times a year because of how she'd treated them when they were kids. The first time they came, they taped crosses on the wall, like a lot of crosses. The next time, they brought a priest. And listen, the room was small, maybe 10 by 12. So with all that up on the walls, it felt cramped and heavy, like the air couldn't move right. Anyway, one night I get assigned there for an 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. I walk in, get report from the nurse I'm relieving, and right at the end she goes, "Oh, and you've got Ms. Delphine tonight." The way she said it? Like she was warning me about a storm. I tried to stay calm. I told myself, maybe she's declined since the last time I was here. Maybe she's settled. Maybe this will be one of those nights where you just do your rounds and keep it moving. Med pass at that place was always a marathon. First one around midnight, then another early morning before shift change. 30-ish residents, long, dark hallway, TVs glowing behind half-open doors, the nurses' station lit up at the far end like a lighthouse. Around 12 a.m., I start down the hall with my cart. The corridor was dim, and the only real light came from the nursing station way behind me and those flickering TVs ahead. And when I reached Ms. Delphine's room, I swear my brain took a second to understand what I was seeing. She wasn't just sitting up. She was hanging out of the bed upside down. Like, her torso was still on the mattress, but her head and arms were down toward the floor. Her feet were up, straight up, like somebody had lifted her legs into the air. Her fingertips were touching the ground like she was doing some kind of twisted handstand, except it didn't look human. It looked wrong. The angles were wrong. I froze. That cold rush hit my chest, like when your body decides you're in danger before your mind catches up. My first instinct was nurse instinct. She's going to fall. She's going to fracture a hip. She's going to break her neck. So I rushed in and grabbed her, trying to guide her back up onto the bed. And I know she was blind. I knew that. Everybody knew that. But she looked straight at me with this tight, ugly grin. Not a smile, a grimace. Like her mouth was trying to curl into something that didn't belong on her face. Her eyes weren't focused, but it still felt like being stared through. I remember actually turning my head away because the expression hit me like a slap. It made my skin crawl. I got her back onto the mattress, pulled her up, adjusted her, and I started backing out. Not running, just that fast, controlled, I'm leaving right now, walk nurses do when they're trying not to look panicked. And then, because of course I looked back, I saw her do something that stopped me all over again. The head of the bed was flat. She was lying down, but she lifted both legs straight up like she was making a perfect right angle at the hips. A sheet was draped over her legs, so it formed this pointed tent. Except the tent was too long. It looked stretched, like the sheet was covering legs that belonged to a 6-foot person. But she was a tiny little woman. There's no way. I stood there frozen, probably 10 seconds, just staring, trying to force logic into it. And then she started repeating, in this calm, taunting rhythm, "You see me. I see you. You see me. I see you." Over and over, like a sing-song, like she was enjoying it. I backed out and got out of that room so fast I could feel my pulse in my throat. I kept working because what else do you do? You still have meds to pass. You still have charting. You still have people who need you. But I'll tell you right now, my whole mood changed. The hallway felt darker. The air felt thick. And every time I glanced toward her door, my stomach tightened like it was bracing for something. Then 5 a.m. rounds came. She wasn't due any meds from me at that hour. I just had to check that she was breathing, safe, in bed. Basic hospice check. That's it. The hall was still dark. TVs still glowing. Everything quiet in that eerie pre-dawn way. I walked toward her room, already tense, and the moment I got to the doorway, I saw her again. This time, she was on the side of the bed, like half-perched, and she did this motion that looked like a hop. Not a weak, shift-your-weight kind of movement. A hop like a kid getting excited, like someone bouncing on a mattress for fun. And the worst part? She landed back into the bed and turned her face in my direction at the same time, like she knew exactly when I was there, exactly where I was standing. Her TV was on, bright enough to light the side of her face, and the whole thing felt playful in a way that made my blood run cold, like she was performing. I walked up quietly, because I didn't even want my shoes to sound loud. And I remember thinking, how does she know I'm here? How? At that point, I was scared in a way I don't usually get scared. Not, this patient is unpredictable, scared. More like, my body is telling me something is wrong, scared. When the day nurse came in to relieve me, it was Tasha, full-time staff. I tried to tell her what I saw, and she gave me that look like, "Okay, babe, sure." She goes, "That's not possible. She can't do any of that." And then she starts listing it off. Ms. Delphine didn't feed herself anymore. She was contracted, legs stiff, limited mobility. Hospice. Family requested sedation, Ativan and morphine as needed, usually kept comfortable and sleepy. Tasha said the woman hadn't really spoken or been coherent in months. And I'm standing there like, I'm telling you, I didn't give any PRNs tonight, just her scheduled meds at midnight. She wasn't snowed, she was awake. Tasha shook her head. Even if she was awake, there's no way she moved like that. Vegetative, silent. No, you see me, I see you. No grimace, no movement, nothing. And it wasn't like she was pretending to sleep. It looked like the kind of stillness you don't question because it's exactly what you expect on hospice when somebody's that far gone. I stood there for a second, just staring, because it felt like the night had been erased, like I'd imagined the whole thing, but I hadn't. I know what I saw. I know how her face looked when she turned toward me. I know the way the sheet tent looked wrong, and I know how that hallway felt, heavy, dark, almost dangerous, like the air was warning you. I didn't call it demonic. I'm not even saying it was supernatural. I'm just saying, whatever it was, I never went back to that facility again. And to this day, I still get goosebumps thinking about that quiet little voice, repeating like a promise, "You see me, I see you." So, this happened to me a little over a decade ago, back when I was in high school. I don't tell it often, mostly because I still don't know what to do with it. I'm not even trying to make it sound bigger than it was. I just remember it so clearly, and I've never been able to land on a clean, satisfying explanation. I was 16 at the time, somewhere in the middle of the school year, and for context, I've always been a light sleeper. As a teenager, I dealt with sleep paralysis on and off, and sometimes those weird, half-awake auditory hallucinations, like your brain is trying to dream while you're sitting up and listening. So I'm used to my own mind being unhelpful at night. But what happened that night felt different, too structured, too physical. The only other maybe paranormal thing I'd ever experienced was when I was younger, sleeping over at my friend Tyler's place. I woke up and saw something in the hallway that was darker than the darkness around it. Like the unlit room had somehow produced an even darker shape. It looked almost human, with arms stretched out, and it was moving them up and down like it was waving or stretching. I remember just staring, frozen, until I finally yanked the blanket over my head and decided I never needed to sleep at Tyler's again. The next day we did that classic kid thing where you nervously laugh and go, maybe it was someone in the family messing around, and then everyone agrees not to bring it up ever again. Anyway, fast forward to this night. I woke up suddenly, the way you do when something feels off before you even know why. I glanced at the clock and it was around 3:40 a.m., give or take. The house was quiet, but not the normal quiet. I could hear this faint rustling somewhere, like fabric brushing against something, or someone shifting their weight in a different room. We lived in a small, older house, built mid-century, thin walls, the kind where you can hear a cabinet close from across the place. And the layout was kind of awkward. You'd come in through a side door into the kitchen. From there was a narrow hallway. My parents' room was closest, then a tiny linen closet, then the bathroom, and across from that, the basement door. My room was at the far end of the hall, and my sister's old room, empty by then, was beside it. Here's the part that snapped me fully awake. The house was too dark. In the kitchen, we always kept this little sink light on. Nothing bright, just a warm glow so you could find a cup of water without smashing your shin into a chair. From my room, I could always see a thin strip of yellowish light under my door. But now, nothing. Just pitch black under the door like someone had poured ink down the hallway. And then I heard it. A footstep. Heavy. Not the soft shuffle of a barefoot parent going to the bathroom. It sounded like a boot. One solid step, then a pause, then another. Pause, then another. Slow and deliberate, like whoever it was wasn't trying to sneak, but also wasn't in a hurry. Each step sounded closer, and I remember my throat getting tight because I couldn't make my brain choose between intruder and my brain is doing the thing again. Then the step stopped right outside my door, and my doorknob moved. Not like a gentle bump, like a real, unmistakable jiggle. Someone testing it, turning it slightly, letting it rattle for a second. And then, nothing. No footsteps walking away, no door creaking, no whispering. Just dead quiet, like the sound had been switched off. I ended up sliding back into bed and pulling the blanket up like that was going to protect me from whatever. I stayed like that for what felt like forever, just listening for the smallest clue that I wasn't alone. But nothing happened. And eventually, the fear shifted into this weird, stubborn logic. Like, okay, if someone's out there and they're waiting, hiding in my room isn't going to change anything. If the worst is happening, it's already happening. So I did the dumb, brave thing you do when you're 16 and terrified. I grabbed the baseball bat from my closet. I unlocked my door, opened it slowly, and yeah, My hallway was absolutely black. Not dim, black. Like my eyes couldn't find a single reference point. But the house still had power. I looked out through the kitchen window and the streetlights were on. No storm, no outage. Everything outside looked calm and normal, which honestly made it worse. I crept down the hallway into the kitchen, bat raised like I'd actually know what to do with it. And that's when I saw it. The sink light was on, but the bulb had burned out. So the switch was flipped like always, but the actual bulb was dead. Just a tiny, dark fixture hanging there, useless. I stood there staring at it, feeling my heart slam against my ribs because that explained the darkness, sure, but it didn't explain the footsteps or the doorknob. I went to the closet, found a replacement bulb, and screwed it in with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The light came back on immediately, warm, normal, comforting. I stood under it for a second like it was a campfire. Like if I just soaked in enough normal light, the whole night would turn into something explainable. Then I went back to my room, locked my door again, and since I was already wide awake, I started getting ready for school early. Just trying to act like a regular human in a regular morning. About an hour later, I went out to grab something to eat, and the kitchen was dark again. Same exact thing. Sink light switch still on, bulb blown. A brand new bulb, dead, in under an hour. I remember standing there in the hallway, staring at that strip of darkness under the kitchen doorway, trying to force my brain into science mode. Like if I could just summon every educational TV show I'd ever watched, it would all click into place. Bad wiring, power surge, faulty bulb, old fixture, something. But it felt targeted. Like it was the same specific light being taken away, twice, on the same night, right after those footsteps stopped at my door. I replaced the bulb again. It lit up normally. And after that, nothing else happened. No more footsteps. No more knob moving. No more burned bulbs. The house just went back to being a regular, boring house. And that's kind of why it still sticks with me. Because it wasn't some dramatic haunting with slamming doors and floating objects. It was small, quiet, almost polite. But it felt intelligent in a way that makes my skin prickle even now. To this day, I still don't know if I lived through something paranormal, or if my tired teenage brain stitched together coincidence and fear into one perfect memory. But I know what I heard, and I know what that doorknob felt like. Like someone was right there, on the other side, deciding whether they could get in. Alright, so I've got two quick stories that still stick with me, even all these years later. And I mean stick with me in that way where you'll be doing dishes one day, and suddenly your brain goes, "Hey, remember that?" Story 1 is a dream that turned into sleep paralysis. Story 2 is what I can only describe as a shadow person situation. Okay, so the first one happened about a week after my grandma passed. My grandpa had already been gone for years at that point. The house felt different, you know? Like the world had shifted, and nobody told your nervous system how to catch up. One night I go to sleep, and I have this dream that I still remember crystal clear. I'm riding in this van with a couple friends, like just normal chatter, normal vibes. And then I look out the window and I realize, wait, we're in Florida. Specifically outside my grandparents' condo, like the exact place from when I was a kid. And I'm like, "Hey, pull over, drop me off right here. I'm gonna go see Grandma." So I hop out, walk up to the door, and I knock. The door opens, and there she is. Not like a ghost, not like a spooky version of her, just her. Warm, familiar, totally real in the way dreams sometimes feel real. She smiles, says how happy she is to see me, and she hugs me, like that tight, safe hug where your shoulders finally unclench. I step inside and there's this narrow little hallway, and at the far end there's a couch and a big mirror. One of those mirrors that makes the space feel longer than it is. We sit down on the couch together. At first, she's smiling, and then her whole face changes, like someone turned off the lights behind her eyes. Her smile drops into a frown and she says, really softly, "He came and took me." And I remember going, "What do you mean he came and took you?" And she starts crying. And in the dream, I start feeling scared, but it turns into anger too, like protective anger, like, who do you think you are, whoever you are? So I push again. "Who came and took you?" And she looks at me like she's afraid to say it, and she goes, "You know he watches you, right?" And I'm like, "Excuse me? Who the hell is watching me?" My stomach just drops. That dread feeling hits, like your body knows something before your mind catches up. And she says, still crying, still calm somehow, "He's watching you right now." Then she lifts her hand and points at the mirror. And in the mirror, I can see the hallway behind me, the one I just walked down. And then I watch this man just step out of the wall. Not like the wall opens, not like a door appears. He just emerges, like the wall is made of smoke and he's walking through it. He's middle-aged, tall, wearing this old-fashioned hat, like a fedora style, long coat, and he's holding a cane. And the weirdest part is, he looks like my grandfather, but not how I knew him. Like a younger version. Same shape to the face, same vibe, but it's not comforting. It's wrong. He pauses for half a second and turns his head, and I swear, he looks right at me through the mirror, like he knows I'm watching. Then he keeps walking, and goes into the opposite wall and disappears the same way he came. I whip my head back to my grandma, and her face goes totally neutral, blank. But there are tears still running down her cheeks like her body is still reacting, even if her expression isn't. And right then, I wake up. Except I don't wake up. I'm awake, but I can't move, at all. No arms, no legs, no turning my head, nothing. I try to call out for my mom, like actually yell, and nothing comes out. I can't speak. I can't even get a sound. It feels like forever, but if I had to guess, maybe 8 or 9 minutes? Something like that. And then finally, suddenly, it breaks. Like my body gets control again, and I can move. For a long time after that, I told myself it was my grandpa coming to get my grandma. That was the story my brain wanted to believe because it felt easier, familiar. But later, years later, I started reading about sleep paralysis and all those shared experiences people describe. And then I saw it. The Hat Man. This figure people talk about seeing during sleep paralysis. This tall man in a hat, sometimes with a coat, just watching. And that messed me up, because it matched my dream so closely that it made my skin go cold. And what's even creepier, recently I was scrolling through old paintings online, just aimless late-night browsing, and I stumble on this one piece that makes me freeze, because it looks like him, that silhouette, that shape. And when I read about the painting, the artist basically said he painted it because the figure kept showing up in his dreams, like he was being haunted by it. So yeah, that's story 1. Now story 2. This was about 10 years later. I was living in a house with a couple friends. I had the basement room. Down there was this small hallway, washer and dryer, and then the basement door. A few days after moving in, I wake up in the middle of the night and I check the time. 4:47 a.m., or close to that, like right around there. I'm half asleep, so I shrug it off, roll over, go back to sleep. Next night, same thing. I wake up, check the time. Right around 4:47 again. By the third night, I'm annoyed. I'm like, is someone coming downstairs? Doing laundry before work? Slamming something? So I ask my roommate, my buddy Marcus, if he's been heading down there early. He's like, nope, not me. All right. So the next night, I wake up again at the same time. And this time, when I open my eyes, I see something at the opening of that hallway. And I don't even know how to describe it without sounding ridiculous, but it's like a void. Like a human-shaped patch of darkness that's somehow darker than the rest of the dark. Like it's not absence of light, like it's something absorbing it. It doesn't move. At first I'm confused. My brain is trying to make it into a coat on a chair or a pile of something. But then I feel it. And the feeling is what makes it real. It feels angry, heavy, like an angry male presence, like the air has pressure to it. So I do the obvious thing. I sit up fast and turn the light on. Nothing. The hallway is empty, everything normal. Next night, same wake up, same time. But now it looks more defined, more humanoid, and it's just slightly closer. Now I'm actually scared. Light on, nothing. And at this point I'm like, okay, there's something in this basement, or my brain thinks there is. Either way, I'm not enjoying it. So I have what I still call my brilliant idea. I buy a pack of beer and I'm like, all right, I'm staying up. If 4:47 is the appointment time, I'm going to be awake for it. So I drink, waiting for the moment, trying to build up courage. And of course, I get too drunk and pass out before the time even hits. But I still wake up at 4:47, and I'm still drunk, like woozy, heavy, bold in the dumbest way. And it's there again. I can see it, and I can feel that same angry presence. So I stumble up and I start talking to it like I'm in a movie, like I'm some priest in an exorcism scene, even though I'm not religious at all. And I'm slurring something like, "You're not welcome here. This isn't your house anymore. You have to go. You need to go toward the light." I turn all the lights on and I pass out again, but this time it's different. There's still a figure, still like a human-shaped darkness, but it's not tucked in the hallway. It's right at the end of the couch where I'm sleeping. And the weird part? I'm not scared, because the feeling is completely different. It feels loving, gentle, calm, like the opposite of the heavy anger from the nights before. And if I had to put a label on it, it felt like feminine energy, like someone checking on me, not threatening me. And after that night, it stops. I never wake up at that time again. Not like that. Not in that house. Not with that pattern. And yeah, those are my two stories. I still don't know what they mean. I don't know if they were grief, stress, sleep paralysis, coincidence, something paranormal, or some weird blend of all of it. But I'll tell you this, I've thought about them for decades. And even now, when I wake up in the dark and the room feels just a little too quiet, part of me still expects to see something standing in the hallway. So this happened on a totally normal weeknight. I think it was a Wednesday. Nothing special about it. Nothing spooky in the air. My friend Mason and I just wanted to end the night doing something calm, you know? Stargazing. Get away from the city lights, find a quiet spot, maybe listen to some music and just breathe for a minute. We drove out past the last stretch of neighborhoods, where the streetlights start thinning out and everything gets in quieter. After a while, we saw this little turnoff, barely even a road, honestly, just gravel and shadows. Mason looked at me and went, "Want to try it?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" It felt kind of fun, like we were discovering something. At first, it seemed normal. The road split into these smaller roads, almost like little branches, and we kept taking the one that looked like it went deeper. We eventually reached what looked like an old ranch house, or maybe a cabin, sitting back from the road. It was weird looking in that neglected way, like the kind of place you'd see in a movie and immediately think, nope. But we laughed it off. Probably just someone's property, old and falling apart, whatever. But then, the vibe changed. We started noticing these little signs and number markers along the road, and I swear they were counting down, like we were going the wrong way. Like this was supposed to be an exit, not an entrance. And the trees were getting thicker, closing in. The road felt narrower. The darkness felt heavier. I checked the map and it said we were like 5 minutes from the end of the road. Easy. Except it just kept going. 10 minutes. 15. It felt like the road was stretching itself out, like it didn't want to end. And the more we drove, the more my stomach started doing that sinking thing, like when your body realizes something's off before your brain can explain why. Finally, I said, "Okay, turn around, now." And Mason didn't argue. He just nodded, like he'd been waiting for me to say it. So we turned around, and 3 minutes into heading back, the car started moving like it had a mind of its own. I'm not kidding. Flat road, no slope, no wind pushing us. The engine wasn't revving or anything. It was just rolling, steady, like it had been set on cruise control, except Mason wasn't touching the pedals. I didn't believe it at first, like I actually laughed, because it sounded insane. So Mason, to prove it, lifts both feet up and puts them on the dashboard. Just casually, like, "See?" And the car keeps going. Same speed, straight down that gravel road like it's being guided. That's when the fear really hit me. And then I noticed the trees. They weren't just swaying, they were moving, like they were leaning in and pulling back, almost rhythmic, almost like dancing. But wrong, too deliberate. The air was still. There wasn't enough breeze for that kind of movement, and the way they moved didn't match the wind anyway. It looked like the forest was reacting to us. Neither of us was talking much at that point. Just these little half sentences, like, "Do you see that?" And, yeah, I see it." When we finally got close to the entrance of the gravel road, we saw lightning, except it wasn't the normal white-blue kind. It was this strange mix of yellow and deep orange, almost like the sky was flashing with fire. And it was late, past 11 p.m., and there weren't even clouds overhead like you'd expect. The moment we reached the paved road again, it was like the pressure in the car popped, like stepping out of a room where someone had been quietly watching you. We both exhaled at the same time. We even laughed a little, like we'd been holding our breath for 20 minutes straight, but we didn't. Because as soon as we got onto the highway, that same sick feeling came back, stronger. Like our instincts were practically yelling at us, "Go home, don't keep looking, don't push it." So we turned around and headed back toward the city. And that's when things got even weirder. Out of nowhere, a car shows up behind us. And when I say out of nowhere, I mean it. 2-lane road, no side streets, no driveways, no intersections for miles. 1 second it's empty behind us, the next there's this pale-colored sedan right on our bumper. So close I could barely see its headlights in the mirror without them blasting into my eyes. It rode us like that for what felt like forever, probably 10 minutes. We sped up to get distance. It sped up too. We slowed down, it stayed right there. No honking, no passing, just glued to us. like it was hurting us. My hands were gripping the door handle. Mason had both hands locked on the wheel. We weren't even playing music anymore, just silence and the sound of tires on asphalt. And then, we crested this small hill. The headlights dimmed, just slightly, and then the car was gone. No turnoff, no brake lights, no pulling back, nothing. Just empty road behind us. I felt my stomach drop so hard it was like I'd missed a step. Not long after that, we passed this older guy on the shoulder with a broken down electric SUV, hood up, trunk open, standing there like he'd been stuck for a while. But he didn't have hazards on. No flares, no phone light, just standing in the like he was waiting. And by then we could already see the distant glow of the city, so it wasn't like we were in the middle of nowhere anymore. But it still didn't make sense. We finally got home, and we just sat there in the driveway for a minute, staring at the dashboard like we needed proof we were back in reality. We talked through it, over and over, trying to make it make sense, trying to turn it into something funny. But I didn't sleep. Because earlier on the gravel road, I'd taken a quick video, just a few seconds, mostly to capture how dark it was and how the trees looked. I didn't even think about it at the time. Later, in bed, I watched it again, and the second I saw it, my chest went cold. In the reflection on the windshield, on my side, the passenger side, there was a face, an older woman's face, clear enough that I could make out the shape of her cheeks and her eyes, like she was sitting right there where I'd been. Except, I was the only one in that seat. And the worst part is, when I saw it, it didn't feel like a trick of light. It felt like something that had been there the whole time, quiet, patient, just waiting for us to notice. And ever since then, I can't drive down a road like that without thinking, what if we didn't just stumble into a weird place? What if we almost didn't get to leave it? You know what's weird? There was this stretch earlier this year where I started feeling like, I don't know how else to say it, like I was being watched. I take care of my mom. She lives upstairs in this older apartment building, only 8 units total. The 2 end ones are kind of like townhouses, and the others are regular apartments all connected in the same long building. My mom's place is Unit 5. And it's been home for long enough that we know what normal sounds like. Pipes, creaks, the usual settling. But this wasn't that. It started with the attic. Not every unit can even get up there. Only a few of them have attic access. My mom's is one of them. And for weeks, it was like clockwork. Every single night, always late. Somewhere between about 10:45 p.m. and 3 or 4 in the morning, I'd hear movement above us. Not a little scurry, not a random pop, actual footsteps. Shifting. The kind of sound that makes you stop breathing for a second because your brain goes, wait, that's weight. And I'm telling you, I'm not someone who jumps at every noise. These apartments are old, sure, but this was too consistent. Too timed. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The attic opening, the little panel in the ceiling, looked different, like it had been nudged out of place. My mom and I haven't touched it. We have no reason to. We don't store anything up there, and honestly, it's creepy enough without adding dust and darkness to the mix. But it wasn't just the panel. There are these bolts and fasteners along the roof line, and a couple of them looked slightly pushed in, like the roof had taken pressure from above. And I know that can happen when someone heavy moves around up there, because years ago, I climbed into an attic in my aunt's building, and she pointed out the same thing. The bolts were pressed down in the exact spots where I'd stepped. It left a little tell, like proof. So when I saw that same kind of sinking above my mom's ceiling, my mind went, okay, someone's been up there. And the thing is, it wasn't just the attic. Sometimes, when the apartment was quiet, especially if I was alone, I'd hear people talking, like low voices, muffled, but close. And the creepiest part? It always sounded like it was coming from my little sister Mariah's old bedroom. Except Mariah is almost never home. She's always out. Friends, trips, staying with her boyfriend, whatever. So I'd hear it, and I'd do the normal thing, right? I'd call her name. I'd walk over and open the door, ready to tell her she scared me. And every time, the room would be empty. No TV, no phone speaker, no one. Just silence. Then the sleep stuff started. This part is hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but it felt like my body was betraying me. There were nights where I'd doze off on the couch for just a minute, like one of those "I'll rest my eyes" naps, and I'd slip immediately into this dream that didn't feel like a dream. Everything looked exactly like it did when I fell asleep. Same room, same shadows, same couch under me. It was like I never left the moment. And in it, something I couldn't see would come at me. Not like a jump scare horror movie thing, more like a presence, a force. I'd feel this heavy pressure, like something pinning me down. My chest would tighten. My whole body would get that sick, warning feeling, like your instincts are screaming but your muscles won't move. And the worst part? I'd know I was asleep. I'd be thinking, wake up, open your eyes. But my body wouldn't respond. I remember thinking, is this what people mean by astral projection? Except it didn't feel mystical or peaceful. It felt wrong. Like I was stuck in the exact same room, but something else had access to me there. But there was one night, just one, that scared me more than all the others. I fell asleep the same way, and it happened again. Same couch, same room, that same trapped feeling. Except this time, I wasn't alone in it. There was a figure standing a few feet away from me. Tall, too tall for the space to feel normal. And it wore something like a hood, the way a cloak hangs when someone is trying to hide. I couldn't see a face. Not because it was shadowed, because there was nothing there. No eyes, no nose, no features, just darkness, like someone had cut a hole where a face should be. But I saw the hands. That's what I can't shake. The fingers looked thin and too long, like bone with just enough skin to cling to it. Dry, almost dehydrated. And the nails were pointed, longer than they should have been. Not sharp like a knife, but sharp like something that's never been cut and has no reason to be normal. I remember trying to scream, but nothing came out. And I was fighting so hard to wake up, because I could feel it watching me like it knew I couldn't move. And then I finally snapped awake. I was sitting up, breathing like I'd been running. The room was the same as the dream, which almost made it worse. No dramatic change, no relief music, just me on the couch in the same apartment, with that sick feeling still crawling on my skin. After that, I stopped seeing the hooded thing. Thank God. But I still don't sleep the same. I don't. And there's one more detail I can't ignore. In my mom's kitchen, on the ceiling, this mark appeared that looks like a child's handprint. Like a messy little smear, almost like a kid had food on their hands and dragged it across the ceiling. The timing was what got me. I'd helped my mom clean the walls a few days earlier, and then, days later, this shows up out of nowhere. It shouldn't be there. It wasn't there before. And I know how this sounds. I know people are going to say, maybe it's moisture. Maybe it's the building. Maybe you're stressed. And sure, maybe. But when you're the one hearing footsteps over your head at the same hours every night, when you're the one opening doors to empty rooms after hearing voices, when you're the one waking up with your heart hammering because you just lived through a dream that felt like an attack, it's hard to shrug it off. It's hard to feel safe. And honestly, the scariest part isn't even what I saw. It's the feeling that whatever is happening, it already knows I'm paying attention. Okay, so this is one of those childhood memories that's still lit up in my head like it happened yesterday, and I genuinely don't know what to do with it. I was probably 7, 8, somewhere in that range, old enough to know what I was seeing, young enough that everything still felt a little dreamlike even when I was fully awake. And I want to be really clear. I'm not someone who grew up chasing ghost stories. Even now, I'm skeptical by default. But that house we lived in back then? Yeah, I'll admit it had a vibe. The kind you laugh about later, but still glance over your shoulder in the hallway. This happened on a morning we were leaving super early, like ridiculously early. We were flying out because I was going to visit my dad in Pennsylvania. My mom, well, in this version of the story I'll call her Marissa, was the type who believed the airport was basically a battlefield and you survived by arriving 3 hours before anyone else. So it's maybe 3:30 a.m., something like that. And the important part is, I'm awake, not half asleep, not stumbling. I'd already been upstairs for a while, had my little bag packed, even took a quick shower. I remember the feeling of being clean and alert and kind of wired, the way kids get when something big is happening. Right before we're about to leave, I go downstairs to use the bathroom one last time. The bathroom was right next to the laundry room. Like, you open the bathroom door and the laundry room is basically right there. We had a stacked washer and dryer, and I could hear Marissa moving around in there, rustling clothes. So I finish up, wash my hands, and I crack the bathroom door open just a little, because I'm a kid and I'm nosy, and I peek out, and I see her at the dryer. She's taking clothes out, but the way she's doing it is wrong. Not like, oh, she's tired wrong. More like stiff, like a toy. Like someone had watched a person fold laundry once and was now trying to imitate the choreography. Her arms were weirdly straight. She'd lift them up, grab exactly one piece of clothing, lower her arms straight down, then extend forward and drop it into the basket without even glancing. Then repeat. Same pace, same angles. No pause, no adjustment, no little human fidgeting. Over and over and over. At first, I'm not scared. I'm just puzzled. Like my brain is trying to categorize it. Mom's being weird. Mom's tired. Mom's distracted. So I whisper, Marissa? Nothing. She keeps doing it. I try again, louder. Mom? Still nothing. She doesn't even shift like she heard me. I turn the faucet off, clear my throat, like I'm trying to announce myself properly, and I say it again. Mom! And this time she does this tiny little freeze, like a micro flinch. Just enough to tell me it registered somewhere. But then she goes right back into the exact same movements, back still turned. And now my stomach is starting to tighten, because I'm realizing she's not responding like a person. She's responding like something that heard a sound and then described to continue whatever it was programmed to do. So I raise my voice. Mom! Nothing. So I finally shout. Full volume. Kid shout. Mom! And she stops. Whatever she was holding slips out of her hands, and she turns around, slowly, like it takes effort. And when she faces me, I can still see it. That's the part that never faded. It was terror. Pure terror, but not like she was scared of something in the room. It looked like she was terrified of me, like she didn't recognize me at all. And I'm just standing there, frozen, with my hands still damp, my heart suddenly going wild, like this hard pounding you can feel in your ears. I remember thinking, why is she looking at me like that? What did I do? She doesn't say a word. She just pivots, stiffly, again with that uncanny marching thing, and she walks toward the back door that connected to the laundry room. It's winter, snow on the ground. She's dressed for inside, shorts, a thin t-shirt, and my kid brain is instantly like, she can't go outside like that. She'll freeze. So I run to the back door and yank it open, and outside, there's fresh snow. No footprints. Nothing. Like no one had stepped out there at all. Now I'm officially panicking, because for a second I think, she's leaving. She's going to the airport without me. I scream, just absolutely scream, "Mom!" as loud as I can. And immediately, from the living room on the far other side of the house, I hear her real voice, calm, normal, sleepy, annoyed. "Yeah?" From the wrong side of the house. And I remember whipping around so fast it almost made me dizzy, because there's no way she could have gotten over there without passing right by me. And there's no way she went outside without leaving tracks. And there's no way, two versions of her exist in two places. But when I look back at the laundry room, the dryer door is still open. The basket has clothes in it. The task had been happening in the real world. It wasn't like I imagined an empty scene. After that, it's fuzzy. Not because the memory isn't vivid, more like my brain slammed a door. I remember a rush of heat, then cold, then crying so hard I could barely breathe. And I remember running toward the living room like I was escaping something, and I couldn't even explain what I'd seen because it didn't fit into words. Years later, I asked my mom, Marissa, what she remembered about that morning. And she told me she did remember me running out of the laundry room crying, totally inconsolable, like something had seriously scared me. But she didn't remember anything happening that would explain it. She even said it stood out because I wasn't the kind of kid who made stuff up or scared easily. And that's it. That's the whole thing. So when I look at it now, I can admit there are a ton of possible explanations. Kid brain misidentification, stress, a weird dissociative episode, a half-dream state that somehow layered itself onto a real moment. But the problem is, I remember it too cleanly, too precisely. The posture, the timing, the expression, the way the voice came from the living room like nothing happened. It's the kind of memory that doesn't feel like imagination. And I'm not even telling you this like, ooh, ghost story. It's more like, this is a file in my brain labeled unresolved. And every time I open it, I still feel that exact same cold shock. And the creepiest part? It wasn't just that it looked like my mom. It was that whatever it was seemed to be trying really hard to be her. And for a moment, just a moment, it almost succeeded. So, I don't tell this story to freak you out. I'm telling you because it still sits in me, years later, like a stone you keep turning over in your pocket. Back then, I was about 26, living out in the German countryside. Mostly open fields, farms, little streams cutting through the land. Not the dramatic kind of nature, you know? No towering mountains, just long, flat stretches where you can see forever. And on a clear night, the sky usually puts on a show. There were a couple wind turbines out there too, turning and steady like they always do. That night, I'd been at my friend Marcus's place. It was late, around 11:30, maybe closer to midnight, and I was driving home on this narrow road that cuts between farmland. Cool autumn air, clear weather, the kind of night where you'd normally catch a few headlights in the distance, even if it's rural. But I didn't. For at least 10 minutes, not a single car. Not coming toward me, not behind me. And that's what got under my skin first. Not fear, not panic. Just this mild, crawling uneasiness. There's a highway exit not far from there, so it's weird for the whole area to be that empty. I remember actually thinking, okay, where is everyone? I tried to shake it off, kept driving, and then, maybe 2 minutes later, I saw something out in a field to the right. At first, it didn't even make sense, just a shape in the darkness. Then my headlights caught enough of it, and my brain finally translated it. A car, upside down, far from the road, like 70 or 80 meters out. My stomach dropped. I pulled over immediately, hazards on, and grabbed my phone. I dialed emergency services with this sudden automatic urgency, like my body was moving before my thoughts caught up. Then I got out and started walking toward it, using my phone flashlight to cut through the dark. It was an older hatchback, dark blue, maybe black, something like an Opel or a Golf. Honestly, I'm not even sure anymore because my focus locked onto details in this strange, sharp way. One wheel was completely missing, just gone, and I remember seeing it lying off to the side like it had been ripped away. As I got closer, I prepared myself for something awful. You know how you brace for it, like you're building a wall inside yourself? I leaned in and shined the light through the broken side window, and there was nobody. No driver slumped over, no passenger, nothing. Just empty seats, and a smear of blood on the steering wheel. That's when I told the operator what I was seeing. She asked the normal questions, where I was, what the car looked like, if I could see anyone nearby. I told her no one, just blood. She sounded calm, professional. She told me to go back to my car, keep my hazard lights on so the responders could find me, and said they'd be there in about 5 minutes. And then the call ended. Now here's where it gets hard to explain, because the car wasn't even the strangest part. The strangest part was what was happening inside me. From the moment I stepped out of my car, it felt like someone had set a heavy weight on my chest. Pressure, like mild pain mixed with this inner tension. Breathing wasn't impossible, but it felt wrong, like my body didn't want to pull air in. I had never felt anything like it before. And I'm not a nervous guy. I'm tall, broad, I've always been physically active. I don't scare easily. I don't walk around thinking danger is waiting for me. But standing there on the roadside, I was scared. Not because I saw a wreck. I mean, yes, that was disturbing. But this was different, more primal. Like every cell in my body was saying one clear sentence: get back in your car. Leave. Now. And only once I was sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, did I start noticing the rest. There were no sounds. No wind in the grass. No distant highway hum. No frogs. There's water nearby, you'd normally hear something. No insects. Nothing. It was like the world had been muted. And then I looked up, and I swear to you, the sky was wrong. It had been a clear night when I left Marcus's place, but here, above this stretch of road, it was just blank. No stars, not even faint ones, just darkness. 5 minutes passed, nothing. 10 minutes, still nothing. The pressure in my chest kept building. I kept checking the road in both directions, expecting headlights, expecting anything. I even started thinking maybe I'd gotten the location wrong. Maybe they were coming from the other side and I just hadn't seen them yet. 20 minutes. No sirens, no police, no ambulance, no random car passing by. Not one. And by 30 minutes, I was shaking. Not dramatically, just this tight, contained trembling, like my body was holding itself together by force. The sensation in my chest had become unbearable, like my own instincts were physically punishing me for staying. So I left. I hate that part, but it's the truth. I drove away because I truly felt like if I stayed 1 minute longer, something bad would happen. And I didn't even know what that something was. I just knew it. When I reached the next town, I pulled into a gas station that was still open. I didn't even care about the coffee at first. I just needed light, people, normal sounds. I needed reality to feel solid again. Her name tag said Nina, asked if I was okay, and I must have looked pretty rough because she kept watching me while she rang me up. I asked her if any emergency vehicles had gone by in the last half hour. She said no. And then she added, casually, like it was just a weird coincidence, "Actually, there hasn't been much traffic at all for a while." She shrugged it off after that, but I couldn't. I stood there gripping this paper cup, feeling my hands finally stop trembling just because another human being was talking to me about normal things. I went home, exhausted, and slept like I'd been knocked out. But in the morning, it was still in my head. That feeling, that silence, that blank sky, the overturned car. So I got dressed, got in my car, and drove back to the spot. And there was nothing. No wreck, no debris, no torn up field, no tracks, no flattened grass. Nothing to show a car had been upside down out there at all, especially that far into the farmland. It should have left evidence. It had to. My skin went cold. I checked my phone. No emergency call in my history. Not even a failed call. Just nothing. Like the conversation had never happened. I drove home in a daze, trying to convince myself I'd mixed up the night, mixed up the location, something, anything. And then I remembered my shoes. The night before, when I got home, I'd put them in the bathtub to rinse them because they were caked in mud from walking into that field. I went to the bathroom. They were still there. Dirty, streaked with dried mud. I looked up local news, police reports, anything. There was nothing. No crash, no mention of an overturned car, no injured driver, no late-night response. And that's the part that still gets me, even now, because if it was a dream, fine. If it was stress, fine. If my mind played tricks on me, okay. But then why were my shoes in the bathtub? Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I replay it and my mind circles the same questions like it's trying to land on something that makes sense. What if I had waited longer? Why didn't I call emergency services again? Why were there no stars? Why was it so silent? And the worst one, the one I don't like saying out loud. If the car was real, where did it go? Because I still don't have an answer. I just have the memory of a road that went empty, a night sky that went dark, and a feeling in my chest that I have never felt before or since. So, picture this. It's a totally ordinary weeknight. We're all at the dinner table. Me, my husband, the kids, plates clinking, everyone halfway focused on food and halfway on whatever story someone's telling. And then we hear it. Not like a gentle oops, not like something sliding off a counter. It was a sharp crack, ceramic on tile, with that ugly little echo you get in a stairwell. Immediately, my eyes snapped to the stairs, because the stairs are basically straight in my line of sight from where I was sitting. I see two pieces, two shards, bounce on the tile steps, like they were thrown into the space. And my first thought is, something fell from upstairs. Second floor, maybe third. Because that's what makes sense, right? So we all get up and walk over. And the second I'm close enough to really see the pieces, my stomach does this weird drop. They look familiar. The color, the thickness, the curve. And right there on the side table by the stairs is this little ceramic pot, an empty plant pot I've been meaning to move for weeks. It's sitting exactly where it always sits, like it's innocent. But the shards on the stairs look like they belong to it. At first, my brain refuses to connect it, because how does a pot break and shoot sideways? Like, what, did it decide to do a dramatic exit? But then we follow the trail. The path of those pieces is weirdly straight, like they traveled in a direct horizontal line from that side table, not from above. One of the shards had even slid under this tiny gap beneath a glass stair panel, like it had momentum, like it had been launched. We pick up the pieces, bring them back, and I swear to you, they fit perfectly into the pot, like a puzzle. The pot had been intact, sitting there quietly, and now it was missing exactly those two chunks. So now we're standing there doing the most human thing ever, trying to recreate reality. We check the upper floors. We look for something small and heavy, like maybe a little decor object or a tool or anything that could have fallen, hit the pot, and sent pieces flying. Nothing. No missing item. No extra object rolling away. No second sound. Just the crack and those two shards. And what really threw me was this. The pot's rim wasn't chipped. There wasn't a dent. No mark that screamed, "Something hit me." It looked like it simply snapped and ejected pieces with force. Now here's where it gets personal, because my husband, Elias, has this belief from his family. In his culture, when something like glass or ceramic breaks inside the home, it can mean the evil eye has been absorbed and dispersed. Like, instead of landing on a person, the negative energy finds an exit through something breaking. And I know how that sounds. I do. I'm not floating around the house with incense looking for portals. I'm a maybe there's a logical explanation kind of person, but I'm also not the type to ignore a string of strange things when they pile up, because this wasn't the first time something like this happened to us. A while back, we had guests over, Nadia and her husband. Sweet couple, but they'd been struggling to have a baby for years. At the time, we had a newborn. The visit was normal, dinner was normal, until our baby suddenly started screaming like I have never heard in my life. Not hungry crying, not tired crying. This was that panicked, piercing, continuous scream that makes your whole body go cold. It went on for about 20 minutes straight. We couldn't calm her down. Nothing worked. And I got so scared I actually called an ambulance. When the paramedics arrived, she was completely calm, like peacefully normal. They checked her, reassured us, and left. Fast forward to now. I'm pregnant again. I'm visibly pregnant, like there's no hiding it anymore. And earlier today, I met up with a bunch of former coworkers, maybe 10 or 12 of them, people I haven't seen in a while. And it was one of those gatherings where everyone is happy for you, but the comments are a lot. Compliments, yes, but also the kind of admiration that feels heavy. Oh my gosh, you're glowing. I'm so jealous. I want that. You're so lucky you get to stay home right now. I wish I could be pregnant. And none of them said anything cruel. They were being kind. But it was that concentrated attention, everyone staring, touching my belly, talking about what they want, what they miss, what they wish they had. And I remember leaving the meetup feeling oddly drained, even though nothing bad happened. Then we come home, we sit down for dinner, and the pot basically explodes sideways in the same room we're sitting in. So we call my mother-in-law, Miriam, because she fully believes in the evil eye, no hesitation. And she immediately goes, "That's what it is." Like it's the most obvious thing in the world. And I'm standing there thinking, okay, but if it's not that, what is it? And then, to make it even weirder, we remembered something else. A few days ago, our house cleaner, Roberto, left a broken clay ornament on the table to show us. I assumed he'd accidentally knocked it while cleaning. No big deal. Stuff breaks. Life happens. But when we told him about the pot today, he looked genuinely unsettled and said, "No, I didn't break that ornament." He said he found it already cracked the last time he cleaned, like it had a piece missing before he even touched it. And he's been with us long enough that I trust him to tell me if he dropped something. He's careful, and he's honest. So now I've got multiple breakages with no clear cause, and this one, the pot, didn't just break. It threw pieces. And that's the part that keeps replaying in my mind. The trajectory, the force, the fact that my eyes were on the stairs and I didn't see anything else fall. So I'm here in this uncomfortable middle space where half of me wants to be rational. Temperature change, hairline fracture, pressure, vibrations, whatever. And the other half of me is like, okay, but why now? Why right after that meetup? Why does it feel like the house is reacting? And I'll be honest, I'm a little shaken. Not because I'm convinced there's something evil in my home, but because it happened so close to us, so suddenly, and it felt targeted, like it chose a direction. So that's where I am, wondering if this is just physics being creepy, or if it's something people have been describing for centuries with different names. Evil eye, energy, a presence, a warning, a release. And the scariest part isn't even the pot. It's how normal the night was right before it happened. Okay, so fair warning, this is one of those topics that turns into a full-on rabbit hole the second you tug on it. I don't have clean answers yet. I just have a growing pile of patterns that won't leave me alone. After my last post, a few of you asked what I actually do have. Like, what's the part that feels solid enough to talk about without me sounding like I'm just spiraling in my own head? So I figured I'd lay it out the way I've been thinking about it, and maybe it'll spark a real discussion instead of the usual ghost story back and forth. I originally started with what people call the brimmed man. And yeah, I'm choosing that name here on purpose because the name changes depending on who you ask. But the image stays the same. He was the first entity I ever encountered, and what messed with me wasn't even my own experience at first. It was the fact that other people I knew had seen him too, years before I ever said a word about what happened to me. Like, they brought him up casually, the way someone mentions a weird, recurring dream. And I remember thinking, wait, you too? Once I started digging, it got unsettling fast. I've collected a handful of older paranormal reference books over the years, some of them dusty, some of them newer, and almost all of them mention some version of him. And then you go online, and it's like stepping into a crowd that's been talking about the same thing without realizing it. Podcasts, forums, documentaries, whole Reddit threads where thousands of people are basically describing the same silhouette. For a long time, I sat with all of that and didn't know what to do with it. And then I had an experience with something else. Something people in different places call the ceiling drifter or the crawl thing. And honestly, if you want to fall down the deepest part of the rabbit hole, start there. Go watch a few random episodes of any ghost hunting show. Doesn't even matter which one. Pay attention to how often some location reports a crawler, a creeper, a thing in the corner, whatever the label is. Then listen closely to the descriptions, because once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. The stories are almost carbon copies. Now, back to the brimmed man for a second. I personally think he's not the same as the general shadow person category. People lump them together, but the vibe is different, and the details are too specific. This figure shows up everywhere. Different continents, different cultures, totally different generations. Some researchers claim reports go back at least to the late 1800s, and whether that's perfectly accurate or not, it's clear the story isn't new. What fascinates me is the consistency. He's almost always described as too tall, like uncomfortably tall. People will say 6.5, 7 feet, sometimes taller. And then there's the hat. The hat style changes. Sometimes it's wide-brimmed. Sometimes it's more like an old-fashioned fedora shape. Sometimes it's somewhere in between, but it never changes enough to pin him to a specific decade. Nobody goes, oh, that's clearly a 1920s guy. No, people just know. Immediately. It's that same gut-level recognition. That's him. And in most accounts, including mine, he doesn't do anything dramatic. No speech, no big chase scene. He just stands there, silent, still, watching. And then he fades, or he slides back into darkness like the dark is a doorway. Now, I know the most common explanation, especially online, is sleep paralysis. And look, I'm not dismissing sleep paralysis. I get why that explanation is popular. But it doesn't fit every case. It doesn't fit mine. And I've talked to enough people, friends of friends, people who weren't trying to be spooky about it, who swear they were fully awake in normal conditions and still saw the same thing. And that's the part that keeps pulling me deeper. How can so many people who have never met, who live in different countries, who didn't grow up on the same stories, describe nearly identical encounters? That's where the whole recurring entities idea starts to feel bigger than a ghost story. There's another one that fits into this same pattern, the night hag, also known in some circles as the old woman, the old hag, the black-clad visitor. This one is probably the most common of the three, and unlike the brimmed man, she's almost always tied to sleep paralysis. The reports repeat like a script. Someone wakes up frozen, can't move, can't speak, and there's an older woman, often dressed in black, moving toward them. People describe feeling her weight, her heaviness, like the air thickens. And when they finally snap out of it, she's gone. But the feeling doesn't vanish right away. It lingers, like your body remembers it even when your brain tries to file it away as just a nightmare. And then there's the ceiling drifter, the one that still creeps me out the most to talk about, because it's often not humanoid at all. People describe it as a moving mass, like a knot of darkness darker than the shadows around it, shifting, smearing, sometimes swelling larger, like it's breathing without lungs. It shows up a lot in older places, abandoned buildings, empty hospitals, shut down schools, half-renovated houses. And here's what's weird. Those locations usually have their own regular haunting stories tied to the place. A person, a tragedy, a name. But this thing, it feels random, like it doesn't belong to the building at all. Like it's not from there, it's just in there, hanging out in a corner, up near the ceiling, like it's waiting for something. And nobody ever has a clear explanation for why it's there. So yeah, I'll be honest with you. I find it easier to believe there's something paranormal going on than to accept that this is all just a shared subconscious glitch. I can acknowledge that some experiences are sleep-related, absolutely. But the consistency across time and geography is hard to shrug off. And I keep thinking about the questions we usually ask. Why is this building haunted? Why hasn't this spirit moved on? What's keeping them here? But what if those aren't the right questions? What if the paranormal isn't only about ghosts stuck to specific tragedies or soaked into specific locations? What if it's something more intricate? Something woven into human consciousness, or something that intersects our reality only under certain conditions? And here's the thought that won't leave me alone. What if these recurring entities aren't random at all? What if they're part of a larger system, something that brushes up against our world in predictable ways, even if we don't understand the rules yet? I don't know. I'm not claiming I've solved anything. I'm just saying, the patterns are there. And once you start seeing them, it gets really hard to look away. So, about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I had one of those experiences that makes your stomach drop, in your own home of all places. We live in a standalone house, no shared walls, no upstairs neighbors, nothing like that. Normally, it's not even quiet here. My mom, my sister, our 2 dogs, and a couple cats keep the place feeling busy and lived in. But that night was different. My sister was out staying with her partner, so it was just me, my mom, and the pets. I'd come home from work pretty wiped out, and all I wanted was a hot bath. I went upstairs, ran the water, and finally sank in. like that first exhale where you can feel your shoulders unclench. And then the silence got interrupted. I heard footsteps on the main staircase. Not light ones either. Slow, heavy, purposeful. The kind of steps where each one lands like the person means to be heard. In my head, I immediately went, "Oh, it's Mom." The steps reached the top of the stairs and didn't hesitate. They moved straight toward her bedroom. And right after that, this awful noise started. Her big mirrored wardrobe, those heavy sliding doors on a track, started getting thrown around. Not gently opened, not a little rummaging. It sounded like someone was yanking the doors hard and slamming drawers shut over and over, like they were angry or in a panic. The impact was so forceful it felt like it vibrated through the floor. Still thinking it was my mom, I called out, "Hey, can you bring me a towel? I forgot one." Nothing. So I called again, louder this time. "Mom?" And then I heard her, faint, from downstairs, like she had to raise her voice to reach me. "I'm in the kitchen." I swear, my whole body went cold. Because if she was downstairs, then someone was upstairs. And not just upstairs. They were in her room, slamming things like they owned the place. I got out of the bath so fast I didn't even think. Water everywhere, feet slipping on the tile, heart pounding in my throat. I wrapped myself in whatever I could grab and rushed to her bedroom. I flipped on the light and started checking everything. Behind the door, the corners, the closet space, even behind the big mirrored sliding panels. I was half expecting to find someone crouched in there holding their breath. But the room was empty. And here's the part that still gets me. The wardrobe doors were perfectly closed. The drawers looked normal, neat, like nobody had touched a thing. I just stood there for a second, trying to make my brain make it make sense. Like maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe bath water in your ears does weird stuff. Maybe I dozed off for a second. So I went downstairs, still shaking, and asked my mom, carefully, if she'd heard anything. She looked at me and went, completely serious, "Yeah, I thought you were stomping around upstairs." That confirmation is what really messed with me. Because if it was only me, I could explain it away as a tired brain, or plumbing sounds, or the house settling, or literally anything. But we both heard it. The heavy steps, the violent slamming, in a detached house, with no one else home. I don't walk around thinking my place is haunted or anything. It's not like it's a constant thing. But every couple of years, something happens that's just too big to shrug off. Then everything goes quiet again for a long time, like nothing ever happened. Okay, so before I start, I need to say this. I remember weirdly little about that vacation. I was around 10, and I've always been the kind of person who forgets defects fast. But 2 moments from that trip have stayed so sharp in my head that it honestly feels like they've been waiting for me in the dark ever since. This was in Puerto Rico, right around New Year's. My dad, Marco, decided we should rent this small place outside of town for a long weekend. That wasn't totally unusual for us back then, but I was thrilled. I've always loved long drives, the kind where you're half asleep in the back seat and the world feels big and safe and full of possibilities, you know? I remember messing around with my little brother Nico, annoying my sister Elena, the usual kid stuff. Nothing dramatic. When we finally got there, the outside of the rental was actually pretty, like postcard pretty. Lots of plants, warm air, that soft glow everything gets near the coast. Inside, it felt cozy too. Nothing screamed danger or haunted or anything like that. For a few minutes, it was just a normal family trip. And then I looked toward the kitchen. The kitchen had this little counter, almost like a breakfast bar, that made kind of an open window into the room. There was the main doorway, and then that counter opening, and behind the refrigerator there was this narrow slice of shadowed space. And in that shadow, I saw it. I'm trying to describe this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm just telling some cheesy, scary story, but I swear I'm not exaggerating. It was hunched, like it didn't quite fit in the room. From the way it was folded over and how high the ceiling seemed, I remember thinking it must have been 8 or 9 feet tall if it stood up straight. Its skin was this sick, rotten brown, wrinkled in a way that made it look wrong, like meat that shouldn't exist anymore. And where its arms should have been, there weren't arms. Just these long, thin stubs, like the limbs had been cut away cleanly and then covered over with smooth skin. Its torso was so thin I felt like I could see bone through it. Ribs, spine, all of it, like a stretched out shape of a body. But the worst part was the face. It was almost human, which somehow made it worse. Like somebody had taken a person's head and inflated it, round and swollen, but still wrinkled like an elderly face. Its mouth was pulled back way too far, like a grin, but not a grin, and I could see gums and these yellow teeth that looked old and sick. And the thing is, I don't remember it having eyes, like there was nothing where eyes should be. But I have never felt stared at so intensely in my life. I froze, completely. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, but my body didn't move. It felt like my lungs forgot what to do. And for a few seconds, it was just me and that thing, staring at each other across the kitchen, like the whole world had narrowed into that one strip of air. Then something happened that I still don't know how to explain. It felt like I got pulled forward. Not like someone grabbed my shirt, more like my brain got yanked closer. My vision turned foggy, like static on an old TV. And I heard this sound, like a song almost, but warped, distorted, like someone humming through a broken speaker. It only lasted a few seconds, 5, maybe 6, but it felt way longer. And then it was just gone. That first night somehow, I still fell asleep. I was scared, yeah, but I told myself I'd imagined it, or I'd seen a shadow wrong, or my kid brain was being dramatic. But the next night, I stopped being able to lie to myself. It was late, around 1 or 2 a.m., and I woke up thirsty. I wanted water, and I also wanted one of the little snacks we'd brought because I was a kid, and that's what kids do. So I got up and went to the bedroom door. We always closed it when we slept, so I reached for the handle. And I froze again. This time it wasn't because I saw something, it was because I felt something. This wave of dread hit me so hard it felt physical, like being slammed in the chest. I remember thinking, super clearly, if I open that door, something horrible is going to happen to me. Not a vague worry, not nerves. It felt like a warning screamed straight into my bones. I got cold all over. My stomach turned. I felt so sick with fear I thought I might throw up. So I crawled back into bed and pulled the blanket over my head like it could protect me. And that's when the footsteps started. Not normal footsteps. Not, oh, Dad's walking around footsteps. These sounded like they were everywhere. Like the house had layers and something was moving through all of them. Above me, below me, beside me. Like it was walking inside the walls and the ceiling and the floor at the same time. Every now and then it would sound closer, and I'd hold my breath so hard my chest hurt. My sister Elena slept in the other bed, right next to this small window, and somehow she didn't wake up at all, not even once. That almost scared me more, like whatever was happening wasn't allowed to touch her, or didn't care to. I stayed like that forever, just listening, shaking, trying not to cry loudly enough for anyone to hear. The only reason I know how long it lasted is because at some point the room started getting lighter. The fear didn't disappear, but it thinned out like fog as the sunrise came in. When the sun was finally up, I forced myself out of bed and opened the door. Nothing. The house was quiet, peaceful even, like it had been asleep the whole time and I was the only one who'd been awake. I ended up sleeping the rest of the morning out of pure exhaustion, like my body just shut down to recover. After that, the feeling of being watched got worse. Like, not a constant panic, more like this tightness you carry, this sense that the air behind you isn't empty. I kept thinking I saw movement out of the corner of my eye, especially in doorways and near the balcony, but every time I looked directly, nothing. And the last night before we left, I'm almost sure I saw it again. I got up to use the bathroom, and when I glanced toward the balcony, I swear it was there. Just a shape, hunched the same way, watching. When I did a double take, it was gone. Later, my sister told me, out of nowhere, that she'd seen something outside on the balcony too. She didn't describe it the same way I did, and she couldn't say when exactly she saw it. But the fact that she said anything at all made my skin go cold. We never went back. It didn't follow us, at least not in any real way. But every once in a while, especially around New Year's, I still dream about that place. And in the dream, I'm 10 again, staring into the kitchen, and my body won't move, and I can feel it looking at me even without eyes. I know how it sounds. I know. If someone told me this story, I'd probably assume they were making it up, or dressing it up into something scarier than it really was. And I will never, ever stay in a place like that again. So, I've lived in a few really old apartments out in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but the oldest one, without question, was smack in the middle of downtown, right above this loud, always busy bar. Honestly, it was a bright little place during the day. Sun poured in through the windows, and if you didn't know any better, you'd think it was just charming. But the thing is, that apartment came with extras. Nothing ever felt outright dangerous, no get out now feeling. But there were enough weird little moments to keep me on edge, like the building was always clearing its throat to remind me I wasn't alone. To understand why it felt spooky, you have to know a little about that part of Wyoming. Those old downtown blocks carry history, the kind that isn't gentle. There were decades of hard living and harder fighting, old bar brawls, messy love stories, cops chasing the wrong people down the wrong alleys. The town cemetery is huge, and at one point, it was even relocated. People like to whisper that not everyone got moved properly, which, great, right? And then there were the tunnels. Supposedly, there used to be an underground tunnel system connecting different parts of downtown. Folks said it got shut down years ago because parts of it were unstable, and because some ugly stuff happened down there when nobody was looking. Whether all of that is true or not, I can tell you this. The basement of my building lined up with where those tunnels ran. There was a bricked-off section that always made my stomach feel tight when I looked at it, like it was holding its breath. Now, here's another detail that always stuck with me. The building wasn't always apartments. It had a reputation back in the day as a brothel. You could still see this odd little feature on the door, this small window pane with an old curtain. I learned later what it was for. Curtain open meant a woman was available. Curtain closed meant not available. Apparently that setup used to be common in that area because there were so many places like that tucked above shops and bars. And people swear some of them stayed active way later than you'd expect. Because of that, I always had this sense that the presence in my apartment, if that's what it was, felt feminine. Not mean, not threatening, more like curious, like they had been there a long time and didn't really see a reason to leave. Except for this one night. This one night is still the creepiest thing that ever happened to me in that place. It was a Friday, and downtown was loud beneath my floorboards. Music, footsteps, people laughing too hard on the sidewalk. I was upstairs with my boyfriend at the time, Nolan. We'd been drinking, nothing crazy, just the kind of tipsy where you start thinking your own ideas sound hilarious. And that's when Nolan goes, "We should use a Ouija board." And I know. But here's the thing. I wasn't one of those people who treated it like a party trick. I didn't ask anything nasty. I didn't taunt. I didn't try to summon some dark, mysterious force. I was careful. I always said hello. Always said goodbye. I treated it like knocking on someone's door. Nolan did not share my philosophy. He thought it was funny to poke at whatever might be around. He started making little comments, sort of daring the room to respond. At first, nothing. No chills, no shifting shadows. The planchette didn't budge. It was just us sitting there like idiots, waiting for a plastic triangle to do something magical. So then Nolan gets this bright idea. He decides we should take it down to the basement that already felt wrong even in the middle of the day. He wanted to play down there, where it's more active, he said, like we were going ghost fishing. And then, maybe 2 minutes later, it happened. I was standing in my little kitchen, and all at once, the air turned cold. Not, oh, it's drafty cold. This was like stepping into a shadow, like someone had opened a freezer door inside my chest. And right after that, pop. My kitchen light burst. Not just flickered, not just went out. It burst. A sharp crack, like a tiny firework. For half a second, I saw that quick spark inside the glass, and then it went dark. I stood there in the dim, frozen in place, and the only thing I could hear was the muffled thump of music from the bar below me, and my own breathing. I cannot explain to you the feeling that filled the room after that. It was like being stared at, like the space behind me was suddenly occupied. I kept waiting for Nolan to come back upstairs, and every second felt stretched thin. I didn't want to turn around, and I didn't want to move. I just stood there, heart pounding, whispering, "Nope, no, we're done." When he finally came back up, he was buzzing like he'd just been on a roller coaster. "Did you hear that? That was insane." He kept talking about how wild it was, how the board felt weird, how the basement gave him the creeps, like he was proud of it. And I was so angry I could have cried. I told him, "You don't get to come into my home and be rude to whatever's here." I made him put the Ouija board away properly, and I made him replace the light bulb too, because honestly, it felt like the least he could do after he went downstairs and antagonized the entire building. And after that, things settled back into their usual pattern. Little odd moments, little reminders, nothing dramatic. But that night made one thing very clear to me. Whatever was in that apartment didn't mind me. It minded him. Hey, so I've been living in Fort Collins, Colorado for about 5 years now, and I've had my fair share of weird little moments out here. But there's one night that still sits in the back of my mind like a pebble in a shoe. It happened up near Labubu, that stretch of wild, wind-sculpted rock and forest out in the Medicine Bow area. If you've ever been there, you might know what I mean when I say it has a presence. Not evil, not threatening, just like you're not alone, even when it's quiet. One thing I should mention up front, I'm a wheelchair user, and my best friend, her name's Mara, she's able-bodied. That detail matters later. So this was a rough week for me. Something happened that really rattled me, and I called Mara because I just didn't want to be by myself. She didn't try to fix it or pep talk me or anything. She just said, "Do you want to get out for a bit? We could drive up into the woods." And honestly, that sounded like the only thing I could handle. We threw on hoodies, grabbed drinks from a gas station, and headed out. The drive into Vitavu is short, and at first it was totally normal. Dark, calm, that kind of peaceful night where the road feels like it's floating through the trees. Then we crested a hill and saw something ahead of us on the trail. 2 red lights. Not headlights like a truck, not bright enough for a car. They were low to the ground and spaced in a way that didn't make sense, and they were coming toward us steadily, like whatever it was had a slow, even pace. Mara slowed down, and we both did that thing where you stop talking at the exact same time without meaning to. At first, we assumed it was some kind of off-road vehicle, maybe an ATV or somebody with a weird setup. But as we got closer, it didn't feel like that. It wasn't bouncing the way lights usually do when something's driving over uneven terrain. It was too smooth. We topped the next rise, and Mara started to pull over to give them room to pass. And then, they didn't. They just weren't there anymore. No engine sound, no crunch of tires on gravel, no flash of turning, nothing. And the thing is, there weren't really any side paths right there. If it had turned off, we would have seen it. The road is pretty open in that stretch. We sat there for a second, both staring into the dark like it might explain itself. Mara finally went, "Okay, that's weird," in the calmest voice she could manage, which somehow made it worse. We kept going anyway, because that's what you do when you're trying to convince yourself you're fine. Our plan was to drive up to Ranger's Point. It's this little lookout area where you can see the lights of town spread out below. We weren't planning to hike. Just roll up, breathe, feel small under the sky, go home. When we got to the gate where the trail begins, I pulled myself forward to get a little closer, just to see, just to feel like we'd actually made it. And my wheelchair locked up. Not like the brakes were on, not like a pebble jammed the wheel. I mean, it stopped so hard it felt like something had grabbed it. Mara immediately came around, crouched down, and checked everything. She looked for rocks, roots, anything that could snag the wheels. Nothing. Then, as suddenly as it happened, I was free again. We both laughed a little. Nervous laughter, you know? The kind you use like a charm to keep the dark from noticing you. Mara said, "Try again. Maybe you caught a groove or something." And the instant my front wheels reached the exact line where the gate began, it happened again. Locked. Like a firm hand pressing down. And that's when the feeling hit me. That unmistakable, full-body certainty that someone, or something, was watching us. Not in a "you're about to be attacked" way, more like a message. Don't go farther. I remember swallowing and realizing my mouth had gone dry. Mara looked up at me, and she didn't even have to ask. I think my face said it all. I just went, really quietly, "I don't like this." And she didn't argue, not even a little. She stood up and said, "Okay, we're done here." We got back in the car, doors shutting like punctuation marks, and drove until we found a little pull-off near a campsite, somewhere that felt less like we were crossing a boundary we weren't invited past. And here's the part that still messes with my head. After all of that, the night turned beautiful. On the way back, the sky opened up with the most unreal meteor shower I've ever seen. I'm talking long, bright streaks, one after another, like the universe was trying to distract us, or reward us, or soften the edges of whatever just happened. By the time I got home, I could breathe again. I felt steadier, like I'd been carried through the worst part of the night and placed gently on the other side. But if I'm honest, The only moment I was truly scared wasn't the lights. It was that feeling at the gate. Because I still don't know what stopped my chair. Maybe it was a weird mechanical thing. Maybe the ground was angled in just the wrong way. Maybe it was coincidence stacked on top of coincidence. Or maybe there really was something up that trail. A bear, a person, an accident waiting to happen. Or maybe it was nothing at all. But I know what it felt like. It felt like the forest leaned close and said very clearly, "Not tonight." And I'm glad, so glad, that I listened. Okay, so I'm going to tell you two things that happened when I was a kid. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I hated the bedroom wing of my parents' house. It wasn't just, oh, it's dark and spooky. It was this constant feeling like I wasn't meant to be there alone. I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye. Once, just once, I watched a little sound-activated toy kick on in total silence, like it had heard something I couldn't. And the hallway. Ugh. My parents had these carved wooden masks hanging up, kind of tribal style, and I swear, they felt like they were watching. Even in the daytime, they made my skin prickle. So, that's the vibe. Now here are the two moments I still can't fully explain. The first one happened when I was about 6 or 7. I had this dream that my cousin, let's call him Milo, was quizzing me with trivia questions. In the dream, I finally knew an answer and I got so excited that I snapped awake and just shouted it. Like I was still in the dream, yelling it out to win. And then I realized, I'm awake. I'm in my room. It's the middle of the night. And I'm yelling into an empty house. I remember the embarrassment first, like that hot, stupid feeling. I went quiet and listened, expecting to hear my mom calling my name or my dad stomping down the hall. Nothing. That's when the embarrassment slid into this weird, creeping confusion, because I was loud and nobody reacted. So I looked around my room trying to orient myself, and my eyes landed on the wardrobe at the foot of my bed. It was just a plain, freestanding wardrobe, 2 doors, no mirror, nothing fancy. On top, I kept a few stuffed animals lined up like little guards. That's what it always looked like. But in that moment, it didn't. It was like one of the ward doors was slightly open, or like there was some middle shelf I'd never noticed. And one of my teddy bears, this tan one I'd had forever, was sitting inside, kind of slumped forward. And I swear to you, it was rubbing its eyes, like a sleepy kid. Like it had just woken up. I remember just staring, trying to make my brain fit what I was seeing into something normal. Like, okay, I'm still half dreaming. It's fine. My eyes are playing tricks. And then it turned around, and its eyes were bright. Not reflective, not caught the moonlight. They were this warm, metallic glow, like amber or gold, and they were too bright to belong in a dark room. I tried to scream, I really did, but my voice wouldn't come out right, like my throat seized. The only thing I managed was this pathetic little high squeak that got stuck halfway. And I did the most kid thing imaginable. I dove under my blanket and pulled it up to my nose like that would save me from whatever that was. I stayed frozen for a few seconds, listening so hard it felt like my ears were straining. Then I peeked out. The wardrobe was normal. Both doors shut. The teddy bears were all on top where they'd always been. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, like my room had never been anything else. And here's the part that messes with me. I didn't run. I didn't wake my parents. I didn't even cry. I just decided it was over. Like my brain snapped a folder shut and shoved it deep away. I remember clicking, "Okay, fine, we're not doing that." The second experience happened later, months or maybe a year after. The timeline is blurry, but the feeling isn't. By then, I had this habit of sneaking into my parents' room at night. Not every night, but enough that it was normal for me. I'd wake up in my own bed, feel that awful, wrong feeling about the hallway and those masks, and I'd shuffle into their room and wedge myself between them. One night, I'd already done that. I was safe, warm, squished between my mom and dad. Then I woke up again. The bedroom door was closed, but it had those textured glass panels, warped enough that you can't see details, just shapes and movement. And I saw someone out there, a silhouette, moving slowly along the hall. At first I thought it was my brother, let's call him Jonah, because who else would be walking around at night? But the shape didn't move like a sleepy kid going to the bathroom. It was hunched, low, almost dragging its steps, like it was tired in a way I couldn't name. I lay there, wide awake, watching it cross that glass. And then it stopped. And it turned its head toward the door, toward me. And through that warped, blurry glass, I saw the same thing. That soft gold glow, those eyes. Not bright like headlights, more like embers, like something alive in the dark. I didn't even think. I instantly went limp and shut my eyes and did this perfect performance of sleeping. You know when you're a kid and you suddenly become an Oscar-winning actor because you're terrified? That. A few seconds passed. I cracked my eyes open just a sliver. The silhouette was moving again, slowly, away down the hall, toward my brother's room. And again, I did something that still confuses me. I let myself believe it was my brother. I told myself I'd imagined the eyes. I rolled over and went back to sleep like that explanation was good enough. But later, days later, I replayed it and realized how little sense it made. Jonah didn't walk like that. He wasn't up wandering at night. And even if he had been, what kid has glowing gold eyes? Those are the only 2 times I ever saw them. The gold eyes. Twice, and both times I felt awake. Really awake. The first time I remember the embarrassment so clearly, that, oh my God, I just yelled for no reason feeling. The second time I remember the exact thought. Why is Jonah up? Why is he walking like that? And the wild part is, I didn't connect those 2 memories until much later. Like, years later. For the longest time, I only told people the teddy bear one, and it never clicked that both stories had the same detail. Same glow. Same color. Same looked right at me feeling. Eventually, when I hit puberty, the fear of that bedroom hallway faded. It just loosened its grip. I could walk through there without my stomach dropping. But something else started happening instead. I started getting these weird hunches. Not dramatic, not I predicted a car crash kind of stuff. More subtle. Like I'd suddenly feel moved to say something, even if it didn't match what I was thinking, and then later it would turn out to be exactly the thing someone needed, or exactly what was about to happen. It's honestly kind of boring when I try to explain it out loud, but it's eerie when it happens. Like, the feeling is calm and certain, and then reality catches up. And I don't know what you believe, but I still can't decide if those were dreams bleeding into waking life, or if I was seeing something real and my kid brain just didn't have the tools to deal with it. But I'll tell you this, I can still picture that wardrobe. I can still picture that hallway glass. And I can still feel what it was like to be looked at.